Hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media MegaCast. My name is Jess and I am excited to be here with you all today. But before we jump into our content, I have some basic information to cover with you. Let's kick off our day here today by taking a quick tour of your audience console. And we're going to start with the questions window. Now, if you haven't already said hi, there is a whole audience of cool humans out there, so reach out and give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. Also, keep in mind that if you have any tech issues today, a browser refresh is going to fix just about anything. But if those tech gremlins are clinging on, no problem. Just throw a comment in the question section and our crew will be there to help. We also want this to be an informative webinar for you. So throughout today's MegaCast, we hope you'll get engaged and ask all of your burning questions. Not only will we have team members responding to you over live chat, we will also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of our presentation. And if we do not get to your question during the webinar, don't worry, because the awesome experts that we have here with us today will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, next up on our tour, there are going to be lots of cool aha moments in the MegaCast today, and if you want to share those with your community, we've made it nice and easy for you. You can use the Twitter button right there in your audience console, and the hashtag for today's MegaCast will automatically get added to your post. And our last stop on this guided tour, be sure to check out the Handouts tab for some resources and takeaways from our speakers here today. We have an info pack collection of solution briefs, white papers, data sheets, free trials, ebooks, upcoming webinars, and more. So many great resources, so be sure to go explore. And if that wasn't enough fun, we also have some exciting prizes we will be giving away throughout the MegaCast today. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those later on, but a few quick reminders for you all. You do need to be in attendance here live at the webinar in order to qualify to win a prize, and we will follow up with all winners after we wrap the MegaCast today. Now, all winners must submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, hey, if you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can find the full T's and C's in that Handouts tab. Again, just click into the Handouts section, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Now, the absolute most important thing to remember here today is that we love getting all your insightful questions during these live webinars. In fact, we love it so much that we have a special additional prize for all you inquisitive folks out there. In today's MegaCast, we will be giving away a prize for the best question asked in each of our sessions. Now, the expert speakers and teams will review all the questions asked after the webinar, which means that even if your question does not get read out in a live session, there is still a chance to win. If you are a lucky winner here today and would like to donate the value of your prize, we have several wonderful organizations that we partner with. So let us know when we follow up about winning, and we will get that rolling for you. Again, we are so happy to have you all here with us live at the MegaCast today, and we want to keep that good feeling going. So let's connect on social. Reach out and connect with Actual Tech Media on Twitter and LinkedIn. We have lots of great content, and we always want to hear from you. Now, if you're looking for more awesome content right away after we wrap, you want to jump right in, make sure that you subscribe to the Actual Tech Media channel on YouTube. Another fun way to win a prize and to grow this awesome community is to refer an industry friend or coworker to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. Now, you're going to find a link to do that right there in that Handouts tab, and you will also be automatically redirected after we wrap today. Now, both you and your coworker, your friend, could win a prize, and we actually hold those drawings every month. So be sure you refer somebody awesome before you head out today. It could quite literally be a win-win situation. Next, we have a cool opportunity for the decision makers out there to get connected with new and emerging tech and innovative vendors. Here's how it works. All you need to do is click on the link in your Handouts tab and fill out the application. Then the Actual Tech crew will match you with some vendors that we think you should be chatting with based on your needs. There will also be fun opportunities that you can choose to join in, like surveys or test running new solutions, extended demos, and so on. You'll get some chances to win extra prizes, you'll chat with great people, and you will learn about the hottest new trends in tech. So be sure to apply, or hey, send that link to a decision maker in your team. Now, I want to take a quick minute here to remind you about one of my favorite resources, and that is ransomware.org. You can find everything you need to know about ransomware, how to prepare, how to prevent and recover. The site is jam-packed with information, helpful tips, checklists, strategic approaches, case studies, everything you need in one place. So wherever you are in your ransomware preparedness journey, there is something for you at ransomware.org. So go check it out and start exploring. All right, I have one more exciting resource I have to tell you about today, and that is the Gorilla Guide Book Club. It's going to give you access to free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts, so you can stay up to date on trending enterprise technology. And yes, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device, and they are completely free, super easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide, and there's a link for you in the handouts tab as well. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of important things already, and I don't know about you all, but I am excited to dive in, so let's get rolling. All right, well, kicking things off here, a reminder that today's topic is minimizing RTO and RPO, best practices for bulletproof backup and ultra-fast recovery. And this is such a cool conversation because as much as we would all like to believe that we have built the ultimate security protection system with unbreachable walls, well, we all know that security planning is not a one-stop shop, a set it and forget it. So it is not enough to simply focus on protection. You also need to be thinking about recovery, right? And obviously, we all hope that we don't need it, but I think we know that the odds are that sooner or later a threat actor is going to get through. You know, it actually reminds me, and I was thinking about this, it reminds me a little bit when I first started to ride motorcycles, and I remember an instructor saying, you dress for the slide, not the ride. And the idea was that you wear all the safety gear every time you ride. And sure, yeah, you're hoping you never drop your bike. You're hoping you never crash. But if you do, you want the absolute best and protective gear on all the time. So today we're going to talk about dressing for the slide. We're going to be talking about what we need to get back up again and get back on that bike. And that brings us to the all-important RPO and RTO. And again, what we're talking about there, recovery point objective and recovery time objective. So today, luckily, we've got some top industry experts here with us to tell us all about the hottest solutions, the tips, the tricks, the trends, and the best practices that you need to help build that bulletproof backup and ultra-fast recovery. So let's get things rolling here. Now, I'm going to pause briefly and reintroduce myself. If you missed it at the top, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator here at Actual Tech Media, and my friends and fellow moderators, the wonderful Scott Becker and David Davis, will be joining us on live chat a little bit later. And the last thing I want to make sure I cover with you all, because I mentioned again earlier that we had some prizes, so here they are. Today on the MegaCast, you could win one of 5 Kindle Scribes plus the $300 Amazon gift certificates that we will be giving away every 30 minutes. Now, as a reminder, you do need to be here in live attendance during the webinar in order to qualify to win one of those prizes, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Now, if you're not sure what those are, you can find those full T's and C's in your handouts tab for you. Boy, we're just getting started, and I'm already having trouble, folks. It's going to be a long day. No, it's going to be a great day. And speaking of great days, I'm going to hand it over to one of the most eloquent and fascinating speakers I know. We're going to kick things off today on a great note with our keynote speaker, and that is Melissa Palmer. Melissa is a technology analyst and VMware cloud design expert, and just an all-around fascinating human. Melissa, it is always such a treat to have you with us here at the MegaCast. Now, I know you've got some great info lined up to get us rolling here today, so I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away, Melissa.
Thanks so much, Actual Tech Media team. Today, we're going to talk about one of my absolute favorite topics, minimizing RTO and RPO, best practices for bulletproof backup and ultra-fast recovery. Before we get started today, let's just set the stage and make sure that we're all on the same page. Here's what I'm talking about when we talk about RPO and RTO. First, RPO, the recovery point objective, or the point in time we're recovering to. This is simply a measure of how much data can we lose. Then, RTO, or recovery time objective. How long does it take us to recover? Let's take a couple of quick examples. If I have an RPO and an RTO of 10 minutes, that means I need to be able to recover my application in 10 minutes, and I can't lose more than 10 minutes of data. Now, these numbers will vary based on the business requirements of each application. You could have a scenario where you can actually maybe lose a little bit more of data. Maybe you could lose a couple hours worth of data, but that application has to be online very, very fast. So maybe you have a 4-hour RPO, but a 15-minute RTO. It's important to keep these things in mind as we start to talk about data protection. It's also important to keep these in mind as we design our applications and as we come up with these numbers. Usually there's some kind of cost associated with downtime for an organization, and the lower the RTO, usually the higher the cost of downtime is. So how do we actually meet our recovery objectives? There's no single answer to this, but we need to be thinking about it since day one, from how often we're backing up to where we plan to recover to. Now, here's the thing. This can also change over time, so it's really important to make sure that we're always checking in with business stakeholders and make sure these values haven't changed. If they have changed, we might have to completely change the way we're protecting our data. Now, when we hear low RPO or low RTO, there's a couple of things you'll hear almost synonymously with some of these things, and one is replication. Replication is a really popular way to get a low RPO and RTO, but it's really expensive. The way replication works, and let's take the example of a virtual machine, is I have a virtual machine in one site, and I have a copy in the second site that I'm just going to power on if something happens. And what I'm doing is I'm replicating the changes between the source and the destination on a very short interval, say that 10-minute example, right? So every 10 minutes, I'm sending our changes back to our recovery site. And then if something happens, I'm going to power on that VM and it's ready to go. That means I'm using twice as much storage because I need the VM stored on both sites. And I need that compute available. So when I power the VM on, it's going to start to run and it's going to start to run fast. So that's kind of traditionally expensive. And the way that's done is also expensive, right? Because we're usually talking about 2 data centers or co-location or something like that because we have 2 different environments we're working with. Now, again, we might need to make changes to what we're doing today to hit ultra low RPO and RTO numbers. And we also might have multiple data protection solutions in place to meet these numbers based on what kind of application or requirements we're working with. Now, I have done disaster recovery for basically my whole career, and I can tell you I've seen a lot of changes over the last decade. There's one trend that has always been true, though, is that when we're talking about low RPO and RTO, there's some kind of trade-off, and usually it's cost. Usually it's just more expensive to protect this data so we can recover it quickly. Now, here's the problem. If my budget's $1 million and it's going to cost me $3 million to protect this application, most organizations traditionally would sign off on the risk because it's sometimes cheaper to just deal with the outage and the application going down than to fix things in the first place. And when we're talking about traditional disasters like fire, floods, or maybe the zombie apocalypse, the chances of that are happening are just so low, we'll accept that risk and we hopefully won't have to deal with it. Unfortunately, over the last several years, the paradigm has shifted. And I'm going to say a word that's going to make everybody kind of quake in their boots a little bit, or you're going to roll your eyes at me because it's something that everybody's talking about. But everybody's talking about it because it's so important and it is the biggest threat out there right now. That's ransomware. And you better believe that ransomware is a disaster and those threat actors are going to do everything they can to make you try to pay. It's not if you're attacked by ransomware, it's when. And when that happens, you need to be ready to recover, which means all those disaster recovery plans that you've ignored for a while, now is the time to fix them so you can recover later. Remember, we can't actually recover our data until we've protected it the right way. So now is the time to do some planning so we can recover later. Now here's the good news. The threat actors, of course, are rapidly evolving with the way they're doing things. Traditionally, they're trying to encrypt our systems and go for our backups even, right? Because they want us to pay at the end of the day. They're going to go for our backups and try to destroy them to force us to pay the ransom. There's 2 technologies you've probably also heard a lot in recent years that can really help recovery when it comes to ultra low RPO and RTO, especially in the context of ransomware. The first one is the cloud, right? We can get out of the business of having that second data center and recover to the cloud where there's always capacity waiting for us. What else goes with the cloud very closely? Object storage. Most importantly, immutable object storage. So when those threat actors head for our backups to wreak havoc, they can't change our backups and they can't delete them. They can't change them, they can't encrypt them. So we know we're always going to have a copy of our data ready to recover at a moment's notice. The game has changed, and the time is now to make sure we're ready to recover later. Now, you're going to hear from a great group of technology companies who all have unique solutions designed to help you hit those ultra low RPO and RTO numbers, no matter what your requirements are and without compromise. So get ready to have your mind blown and get ready to see all this wonderful technology that's going to enable you to recover fast. Back to you, Actual Tech Media team.
I love it, Melissa. Yes, we are ready to have our minds blown. And I think I want to just echo one more time that reminder that Melissa gave us right at the end. And I've said this a few times recently, but just because we're talking about something a lot doesn't mean that it's not an issue. And I do think that sometimes we start to get, there's that fine line between panic and too comfortable. Well, maybe it's not a fine line. There's a big gap between panicking and getting too comfortable. And we tend to swing on that pendulum to one extreme or the other. And it's about finding that middle ground where you can take action. Now, speaking of taking action, I've got a poll up on the screen for all of you now. What we're looking for is, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions at your company? So today we're talking about a lot of this recovery and kind of getting back in with RTO, RPO. So if that's something that you're thinking about at your organization, what is the timeline that you'd like to make those changes, whether it's starting a whole new strategy or maybe updating existing strategies? So take a second now and just let us know that. That'll help our speakers know whether they're speaking to you in a short-term or a long-term kind of time period here. So we really appreciate that feedback. And I'm going to move things along. Okay, well, thank you to everyone who answered that poll. But as you can see, we have an awesome presenter in the wings for us today. So I am going to move things forward. Up next, I am so excited to introduce our very first expert here with us today. Kicking us off, Sham Oza, Director of Product Management at Spanning here at Unitrend. So Sham, I'm so excited to welcome you back to the MegaCast today. It is always such a pleasure to chat with you. I know you've got some cool stuff to cover with us all. So I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome. And this has been some great content, so far from our keynote speaker. My goal here is to kind of talk to you as somebody who's been in the trenches with a lot of you folks, or people who are having the same problem. And you've seen that, in some places you'll see Unitrends, in other places you'll see Spanning. In general, we are a backup business, and we are all Kaseya companies, and all of our backup products are part of a robust suite of solutions that will protect everything from your laptops and your workstations all the way to your Azure workloads in the cloud. And that's because we live in a crazy new world. We have all kinds of crazy new modern RPO and RTO challenges because of technology and how things are shifting in the workplace. And then we'll talk about tools, solutions, and strategies on how to hit those targets, meet those challenges, but not to forget about TCO, right? Anyone can get a Ferrari if they had all of the money in the world and all of the power and ability in the world. But we all know that we're dealing with things like budgets, compliance restrictions, governance, people, process, all that kind of stuff. And so you need to do it in a way that's affordable and manageable, and to give you confidence that the targets that you're projecting to your stakeholders, to yourself, right, are accurate and reliable. And then, of course, we'll have some time for a Q&A, at the end. And, one of the things that we always talk about is the state of the cloud. And we've done a bit more digging into this specific area. So obviously, you've heard us talk in the past about this convergence of hybrid workers and hybrid workloads. And the cloud is really kind of accelerating people's use of multiple solutions, right? We need something for CRM. We need something for email. We need something for collab. Ooh, we've got to build this new custom app. Let's put it in Azure. Let's put it in GCP, whatever it might be. And the commitment is real. It wasn't just that there was a vision, but we've started surveying folks out in the field. And what we've seen is that everybody is using the cloud. Many people are using multiple clouds. And what we saw in the recent year, which was interesting, where there was a massive uptick in the deployment to Azure. So a lot of people have been very familiar with AWS, and Azure has kind of been hot on their heels. And people are really committing heavily to this cloud strategy. Now, one of the things you have to keep in mind is in order to meet those RTOs and RPOs, one of the things that we do is we rely on external vendors. Why? Because that's what they're specialized in. They're specialized in running the data centers. They're specialized in physical security, network security, all that stuff that you don't want to deal with if you're an accounting firm or you're selling French fries, right? That's not your business. And so one of the smart things you can do is look to the cloud, look to a SaaS vendor, an IaaS vendor, or a PaaS vendor to provide you with those SLAs, that high availability, that high redundancy. However, that is not, one thing where you swipe a credit card and suddenly you're bulletproof, right? You're still responsible as the end user to prevent data loss and ensure that you can recover from data loss that's caused by things like human error, programmatic errors, malicious insiders, and anything else that this crazy world will throw at us. Things like, AI chatbots that are socially engineering people and stuff like that. It's just getting wackier and wackier. One of the things that I saw in the news recently, we talk a lot about human error and stuff like that, but the vendors aren't perfect. And a lot of people earlier this year were asking around the office, hey, is your email working? Hey, is Microsoft 365 working? And I'll tell you this, after a few minutes, people stop asking. They kick up their feet and they say, well, Teams isn't working, email isn't working. Your business basically stops. And what actually happened earlier this year was that they're very talented folks. This doesn't happen often, right? But when it happens, we hear about it because it is infrequent. But it's big news when it does happen. And basically, there were some Microsoft technicians, specifically on the networking side of the house, I believe. They were updating some routers and switches, and a command went through that wasn't fully vetted, and it caused all kinds of chaos. And because a lot of these clouds are interconnected, we saw GovCloud, Power BI, and other related services in that region go out for about 4 hours. And so, even when you place your reliance on these guys, there is always a small chance that things can go down, right? It's not just swipe a credit card, stop worrying about it, right? There are things that can go wrong with the vendor themselves, and you need to be prepared for that. Now, what about all the other situations that we were talking about? These are just a couple, but, in the past, what I've seen is CodeSpaces was back in 2014, kind of the early days of the cloud, let's say. And they actually had a disgruntled employee who had access to their primary containers for production, as well as all of their backups. He didn't get what he wanted, wasn't happy. We don't know the full details, but he had all the keys and he blew up everything, backups included. When you look at Rockstar and Uber, some of the more recent breaches, these were done through human error, specifically by exploiting social engineering. In the case of Rockstar, their source code was obtained and leaked online. In the case of Uber, it was a kind of a catastrophe where a user socially engineered their way into the system and then found a script that the DevOps teams were using, and that script actually contained unencrypted security keys for all of their cloud workloads. And I'm not just talking about one. These guys were not doing the all eggs in one basket strategy at Uber, but they had the keys to Google Cloud, Azure, AWS, whatever they needed, all in one place. And in the case of MetaBank, this was a data breach that wasn't about deleting data, taking down services. This was more about sowing political discord. And in this case, they actually exfiltrated the data and then shared that data online, sensitive medical information about folks, basically to cause political chaos. So what folks can do, whether it's on the vendor side, what the consequences of that can be, or some of the things that can go wrong inside your own house or when people attack your house, right, can be very frightening. And so one of the things that you got to think about is while the cloud is highly secure and highly resilient, when you really want to get those RTO and RPO, you have to think about making sure, am I vulnerable to a single cloud risk? And that includes, a single vendor, but also even within that vendor, is everything in a certain geo, in a certain region? Is it all tied to a certain subscription? Does somebody have access to all of those? How are you compartmentalizing that? And also, as these workloads start to change, you've got some stuff in Amazon, you've got some stuff in SaaS, how you protect that, how you deploy infrastructure to protect those workloads, and when those workloads start to grow in storage or use, could lead to unpredictable costs because you don't have a simple per user model or per gig model, and could lead to sticker shock, during deployment, a year or two into the deployment when you come time for renewal and things like that. And it can become very difficult managing all of these different environments just day to day, logging into them, different admin consoles and all that. So one of the things that we'd like to introduce you guys to today, and it's definitely not everything that we do, but I think it's very relevant to this discussion, and kind of the state of the industry, is that we now also have business continuity and disaster recovery services specifically for Microsoft Azure. So we already do SaaS. We already do your file shares. We already do your business critical servers with physical and virtual backups. But now we also extend that capability to Microsoft Azure. You're able to take backups locally within your subscription. You're able to take those backups to another subscription or to another region, or even have a failover in our data center so you're not putting all of your eggs in one basket. And you're going to get automation, you're going to get hourly backups, you're going to get confidence through things like screenshot verification, and it's a very, very simple pricing model. Look at the size of the disks that you're protecting, and that's how much you're going to pay for in 500 gig increments. And that is very, very important when you think about your cloud strategy. People are saying, well, Microsoft's got it, right? But what is your strategy if Pennsylvania goes down and you need to fail over to Virginia or to the West Coast? How is that going to happen? What are you worried about egress or ingress fees? Are you worried about the actual recovery time? Have you simulated it? Do you have the tools to be able to simulate that recovery? And ultimately, when you start bundling all that stuff together, you start bundling it together with technical support, failover testing, additional sites, the TCO can start to explode. And we're just talking about Azure here. What about, Salesforce? What about Microsoft 365 and our on-prem stuff? So one of the things that's really important is when you look at these white glove solutions that are kind of built for the cloud from the ground up, one of the biggest things that kind of go unnoticed is you're able to meet these critical requirements. You're able to take that backup and do a recovery, but you're able to do it in a way that's affordable and isn't going to blow up your budget. And this is just our example of comparing, Azure backup to the native capabilities. But just imagine the same thing applied to Microsoft 365 backup, your on-prem backups, so on and so forth. And, backing it up isn't just something that you want to do, but it's going to be a requirement for a lot of the important changes that we're seeing in the industry, right? And one of the other biggest trends that we're seeing, not just with cloud, is with cyber insurance. Half of small to mid-sized businesses and mid-market enterprise folks have some form of cyber insurance already. So they're moving very, very quickly. They've secured these policies. A lot of others are in the process of getting quoted, doing their evaluations, and there's only a very small minority that aren't thinking about it at all. But one of the things is you don't just have to, just like with health insurance, right? You don't just say, I need to have health insurance. You have to say things like, well, this is really important. My health is really important. I need to know my lifestyle. I need to make sure that when I qualify, I can qualify for a policy that makes a lot of sense for me. If you're smoking 15 packs a day and jumping out of planes every single day, you may not qualify for a policy, or your policy might come with a bit higher of a premium. The same thing applies to cyber insurance. First of all, in order to qualify, you're going to have to demonstrate that you have technical safeguards in place. You're encrypting your data, you're backing it up, you're not just backing it up into a single location. That's going to help you qualify for a good policy in the first place, and obviously for favorable prices and rates as well. But when it comes time, and eventually you're going to have to make a claim, that's why we get insurance, right? This is really important for us to understand. When you make that claim, they're going to ask you for validation. Did you make sure you patched all your systems? Did you make sure that there wasn't malware? Did you document your recovery plan? Did you have a vendor that was providing sun up, sun down support every single day of the year? And many times, if the answer to some of those things is no, we forgot to patch, within 45 days or 90 days, and somewhere in the fine print it says you need to do that, you may not get the entire payout. You may not get the payout at all, depending on how extreme the terms are. And that's really, really important. So one of the things that you want to be able to deliver to your business ultimately is to deliver proof and confidence. So one of the things that we do across all of our products is we make it insanely easy to test. But not only do we make it easy to test, but provide you with the verification so that you can go to auditors. You can go to your stakeholders who need to know that things are in place and functional with things like testing, manual or automated, getting screenshot verification that the system's booted up and the applications themselves came up and running and all your scripts ran. We can create white glove services that help you not only test your run books, but actually run through them when a disaster happens. And one of the things that's really important is I just talked about Azure. You saw some of our names before, Unitrend, Spanning. It's because we are a suite and family of backup solutions that are all integrated together, priced and bundled together, and they all talk to each other. We all feed our status into a single screen. Whether you're protecting your primary headquarters, whether you're protecting something in Azure, a branch office, or a laptop with your road warriors, the status of those users, the PSA, RMM integration, and things like that, all of that happens through a single pane of glass. So you're not wasting time managing, you're not losing money overpaying, and you have clear visibility into what's going across in your crazy, hybrid environment. And that's how, we really think you're going to be able to hit those critical RTO and RPO timelines, importantly, without breaking the budget. With that being said, I'd like to leave the session open for polling and Q&A, and I really want to thank you guys all for your time today. I know you have very, very busy days, and taking any time out of your day is tough.
It can be, but this is so important. And Sean, thank you so much for that really interesting presentation. I was laughing at the start with your comment that anyone can have their dream car if you have all the money in the world. It's such a silly thing, but it's such a good point that often we forget the confines of reality when we're talking about some of these things, and it's easy to just get caught up in the blue sky and, we'll just do this and this will just happen. And of course, what we're planning for are the days when the blue sky isn't there.
Absolutely. And it's not even, always about budget. Like there's just physical limitations. I have an oil rig. I'm not going to have an Azure data center on an oil rig.
Oh, great point. Yeah, we forget sometimes about those other, resource and sort of physical limitations beyond just obviously the monetary resources. I do want to say Adam sent you a high five, Sham. He really enjoyed the information that you just provided. And I'm going to jump into some questions here, but before we do that, I do want to point out to everyone else in the audience that we have that poll up on the screen, and what we're looking for is what additional information you would like to get about the Unitrend solution. So we have obviously just got a lot of great information from Sham. and there's a lot more to dig into. So please do make sure that you are clicking on that poll and let Unitrends know how they can follow up with you. While they're doing that, should we get into a few of these questions here?
Yeah, let's fire away.
All right, let's do it. This was a really interesting one because as we were just talking about the other elements besides finance, and the human element comes up a lot. So we have a question here about training and how can we better train our users to prevent things like this from happening. And the comment here, I'm too busy fixing things to train them on cybersecurity. I love that, and I think a lot of us can relate to that. What do you say to that, Sham?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I'd say is obviously you want to look into backup and recovery solutions that integrate with other platforms out there, phishing defense, dark web monitoring, and things like that. We've got all kinds of stuff like that, but the strategy doesn't always require you to buy another tool or add on something else. One of the things that I like is making sure that the solution that you're investing in can help your users help themselves. So a great example is having tools that allow people to do self-service recovery. Let somebody restore a file from their own OneDrive or their own mailbox instead of making that, a help desk ticket and inundating them with stuff. And as far as, other strategies, I say this all the time: order pizza, have a lunch and learn, and just focus on one small topic like passwords at a time, and it'll go way further than a 4-hour training.
That's such a great point. And the idea of chunking is the methodology term I've heard. The highly technical term is educational chunking. And I think that this is a great approach because it can feel really overwhelming if you just throw everything, and especially with all the tech acronyms and it just, for somebody that doesn't think they're a tech person, they're just going to glaze over. But, making it conversational, making it more interesting, understanding the why, that's such a great approach. And pizza always helps. So that's a good place to start. Yeah. Okay, I want to try to get to a few more of these. And this is a good one. Eddie was asking, and we hear this a lot. So his question was specific regarding RPO and how an organization can be sure that your point of recovery is not also compromised. That comes up all the time when you're dealing with these types of situations. Is if we're talking about recovery, how do we make sure our backups aren't also compromised?
Oh, it's a great question. So one of the things that's important is the platform that you're built on, right? So we have a hardened Linux box, for example, for our physical and virtual appliances. That's one way of protecting those systems. Another way is that we have ransomware detection, so that if we detect abnormalities and things like that in the production environment, we can alert you before things get worse, because now we know ransomware will attack backups, as well. So being able to detect it, being able to avoid it, since most ransomware is targeting Windows systems and things like that, so we're kind of insulated from it as well. And then the fact that we have native integrations with things like roles-based access control, whether you're using stuff in-house or you're using some of our solutions, you really just have to layer those defenses. And the most important thing, man, just keep the keys separated. Believe it or not, that's one of the most important things, is no one can have all the keys.
Man, isn't it funny how often it really comes down to sort of basic, the same security you'd apply to your own home, and like, don't leave your door unlocked. It seems really obvious, but
yeah, and it's frustrating though. I sympathize, because if I got admin access to everything, I could get my job done very, very, very quickly.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
You have to trade that off.
Such a great point, Sham. And I wish we could keep going with this. Unfortunately, I think we're going to have to wrap it up pretty quick here. But before you leave us, I want to ask you our finale question here. Is what does somebody do if they want to get started? They're really pumped up and want to jump in with Unitrends. What's their first step?
Yeah, so if you're looking to protect yourself on the SaaS side, you can go to any of the respective app stores, the Salesforce App Exchange, the Microsoft 365 Office Store, or the Google Marketplace. Our spanning apps are there, and you get a 14-day free trial, no credit card, no nonsense that way. And if you're interested in the other solutions, I highly recommend going to unitrends.com, and we can talk to you about everything from appliance backup to hybrid backup, until you're tired of talking about backup.
Yeah, that's no such thing, right? There's no end of interest here. And speaking of which, I do want to let you know that Eddie and Jeffrey Eddie wanted to say thank you for answering his question. Jeffrey sent you a high five. You got some fans out there in the audience. And I do know there's a lot of questions that we didn't get to today, Sham, so they'll be there on live chat if you have a few moments, and we'll also make sure that we get them on over to your team so you'll have a chance to follow up. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Have a good one, guys. Stay safe out there.
I love that. Well, and I'm going to remind you all that if you have not checked out the handouts tab yet, click on the Unitrends link. There is a buyer's guide from Unitrends, Backup and DRAS IT buyer's guide. So we hear this all the time from you all. How do I evaluate the right solution for me? How do I find the right vendor for me? There's a handy dandy buyer's guide right there for you. That's going to walk you through how to choose the best vendor and the best solution for you. So go check that out. Now, while you're clicking on the poll and downloading that handout, I'm going to give away our very first prizes of the day. Now, I'll remind you one more time that you do need to be here and live at the MegaCast in order to win. So we're going to start with a $300 Amazon gift card. And that is going to Justin Shively of Indiana. Justin Shively of Indiana. And then I'm going to go ahead and give away a Kindle Scribe, and this is going to Winnie Chu of California. Winnie Chu of California. You have won a Kindle Scribe. So congratulations to Winnie and to Justin. We will be following up with you after we wrap. Now, there's lots more chances to win a prize, so stay tuned. And there's that best question gift card coming in hot from each session. So even if you ask a question that we don't have time to get to, we're reviewing all the questions after we wrap, so there will be time for you to dig into that or to win that best question card after we wrap today. All right, well, we are going to keep things cruising right along here, because up next, as you can see on the screen, we have another familiar face. I like this. We're getting some of our greatest hits here today on the MegaCast. We're going to hear from another familiar voice on the MegaCast, and that's Laverne Wilson, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Laverne, thank you for being here with us again today on the MegaCast. Now, I know you've got some great info to cover with us. Excited to jump in. Sorry. I was thinking I was getting a message that Laverne was not with us on the line, but he's there and present, so we're ready to go. Laverne, I know we want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to hand things over to you. Take it away.
I absolutely appreciate that. Thank you, everybody, for attending today's session. Let's go ahead and get started. First note, however, I want to say that I am actually in the office today. This is a rare event. So if you happen to hear a little background noise, my apologies. I'll do my best to make sure to keep that in mind as we go through this. So today, we're going to be discussing, or rather I'll be discussing, Rubrik and how we're able to protect your environment as it relates to your data and offer cyber resiliency, so that while it's great to have backup, I think it's important to be able to recover from those backups. Now, before we actually jump into it, there's a few points that I want to highlight as far as information is concerned. In the last 18 to 24 months, an overwhelming majority of cyber events, particularly ransomware attacks, have involved encrypting backups. The one item that I always ask when I speak to new customers is, what steps have you taken to harden your data protection environment? And unfortunately, a lot of the customers I speak to, their initial response is, well, we have a backup. Well, that's awesome. Having a backup is the first step. I would say, again, beyond just having a backup, have you tested the backups? What steps have you taken to ensure that those backups are available in those break glass situations where there's an absolute emergency? One of the longest steps in recovery is determining the impact to data. So when you have a ransomware event, typically the scenario goes, you receive the note, and then you start to look at and determine, hey, what can we do to determine the scope of the attack and what data is safe and what data is not safe? Another consideration is the climbing trend of data exfiltration. I think a lot of the bad actors in the world today who are instigating ransomware attacks are also capitalizing on the fact that if they are able to exfiltrate data, is the data that's been exfiltrated sensitive data, and so thereby effectively leveraging additional revenue streams for themselves by not only encrypting your backups, but also holding your data and determining how much they think it's worth for you to not have that data released. Personally identifiable information, sensitive data, is it in scope, and what are you doing to ensure that your data is safe? During a recovery event, one of the questions that cyber insurance companies ask is, again, what is the sensitive data impact? They need to know what their risk posture is in the event sensitive data has been exfiltrated. What do they need to do to proactively get ahead of it? What do you need to do to ensure that data was not impacted? And beyond that, having all those particular measures in place, or perhaps in place, is have you tested what recovery times would look like in your environment? Oftentimes, again, just based on my personal conversations with customers that I've dealt with over the last 2 years, the answer, unfortunately, is no. They haven't had a situation where they've done a full recovery or a test of their environment to ensure they're able to recover if something were to occur. So oftentimes this leads to the fact that they have not instigated or instituted a formal ransomware plan. So to sort of put together steps to be able to recover as quickly as possible. So if you do not have a plan in place, I recommend formalizing a plan, putting something together so that you, yourself, and the appropriate team members know what steps to take. Unfortunately, the other option is if something happens, what do you need to do and how quickly do you need to move? So first slide, we're looking at Rubrik's evolution. So when we initially started as a company, we were founded in 2014, and one of the initial products that the company brought to the market was specific to backing up VMware environments. Now, since then, of course, our portfolio has grown, and we've developed into a security and cyber resilience product so that, again, not only is having a backup good, but being able to recover with those backups are better. Pioneer of zero trust, we absolutely stand by the fact that at the core of our product is a zero trust posture. And with our integration into the cloud, we offer easy integration into most S3 compatible cloud archival targets. And again, with our product, a hardened on-prem chassis, we are security at the point of data. Let me advance the slide. So we already know this. Fact is, cyber events are on the rise. And a lot of organizations are taking the time to sort of beef up the stack, as you see there, as far as hardening their perimeter, taking steps to secure their network, ensuring their endpoints are protected, and also application. I think, however, one trend that we've noticed is that as much as you may spend on the outside, bad actors are able to, with some level of sophistication, breach these particular layers of security and get to your data. And this is an unfortunate byproduct of the era that we live in. There's been a huge surge in the number of people working from home, the number of people that are working remote, the expansion of businesses to secure robo-locations. And in those examples, when you have additional layers, those particular layers could potentially become threat vectors. And so our recommendation, of course, is ensuring that you take every possible step to not only have your data protected. Again, more importantly, I believe, is being able to recover your data in the event something were to occur where your data is either encrypted and or exfiltrated for extortion purposes. And again, I think with the bad actors that are out in the world today, whether they're individuals, organizations, or state-sponsored entities that they have nothing but time on their side. And to instigate a ransomware attack for them is just a simple matter of flipping a button or leveraging an off-the-shelf ransomware as a service opportunity. One person could spin up a VM in a cloud instance and start launching ransomware attacks at corporations at the push of a button, essentially. So, as we move forward, why are organizations stuck paying ransom? So, here's how we typically see this play out. Your data is locked in. You receive the dreaded ransomware notice. Option one, you immediately go to pay the ransom and hope that the decryption key will free your data of the malicious code and ultimately provide you access to your data in a timely manner so that you can maintain business continuity. Option two, and again, this is something that we see frequently, is attempt to recover. Now, in this particular scenario, we normally see a motion where you have two teams engaged in taking steps to be able to recover from the ransomware attack. You have IT operations and another team, normally security operations. Now, each of these teams typically take different steps to determine the recoverability of their data. And oftentimes, when this occurs, you have a protracted engagement. I think recent studies have shown that a typical ransomware attack normally results in 21 days of time necessary to recover if they're able to recover fully. Now, I don't know about you, and I don't think a lot of organizations would ever be in this position, but 21 days of downtime is not a good posture to have to adopt to. Consider your revenues lost in that particular time frame and the ultimate impact it would have in your financial well-being. I think there are horrible stories that are currently in the market today that illustrate that if a company or organization is hit by a ransomware and it's a protracted engagement, they are often left with no resource other than to sort of restart everything, and that can be challenging. So we want to make sure that you are in the best position possible to be able to recover. Now, ultimately, with either of these two options, if it results in paying the ransom, another unfortunate outcome of paying the ransom is that organizations who have paid a ransom typically, not always, but typically, find themselves attacked again, and oftentimes within 6 months. I think the reason why this occurs is if a bad actor has been successful and the outcome is the payment of a ransom, they share this information. And by sharing this information, another bad actor can essentially purchase the details of the original attack and then institute the same attack that was provided previous to, again, hold that data for ransom. And we don't want that to happen. So, with our product, we see ourselves being on the leading edge of cybersecurity, infrastructure security, and data security together to provide zero trust security. So, within the infrastructure footprint, we have prevention, detection, investigation. Within the data security footprint, we see resilience, observability, and recovery. We'll actually go into a little more of those particular items, but in concert, across the board, with all those items working together in a singular product, we have zero trust security. And again, and I can't say this enough, having a backup is great. Being able to recover those backups is even better. As we advance the slides, the next item we're going to be looking at is identifying the fact that it's time for a new approach. Again, relative age of our company and how long we've been in operation compared to a lot of our competitors. We are fairly new, and as such, we were born in the age of cloud. So as our product and portfolio has evolved over the last several years, we see additional layers of protection that we can offer to our customers, specific to data resilience. The question asked, what if you could cyberproof your backup data? Again, this goes back to the position of having a backup is great, but recovering the backup is probably even more so important. Data observability. What if you can monitor risks and investigate threats quickly? Again, with our particular approach and the way that we're able to harvest the metadata across your environment during our backups, we're able to apply some additional layers of business intelligence around the collection of that metadata so that we're able to provide you the opportunity to determine, what data was in scope, what is the potential blast radius of a ransomware attack, and what particular items are available for recovery as quickly as possible so that you're able to get back to a good position.
Again, just to reiterate, data resilience, data observability, data recovery, as reference to the fact that having backups are great, being able to recover those backups, I believe, is probably a key ingredient into your cyber resilience posture. Now, what if in your ability to recover, you're able to get back to good quicker than it would normally take through traditional methods? So we're going to advance. So as it relates to our position, data resilience, secure your data from threats, whether that is internally or externally. And so with our product, we offer an air gap solution with immutability, with access controlled backups. We have a natively developed file system. And with that natively developed file system, which is based on a highly modified Debian kernel, we offer you the opportunity to leverage immutability across the board. Now, of course, everyone has some level of immutability. And oftentimes, in order to leverage that, you typically see an additional layer that needs to be added to the solution to be able to provide that. With us, the immutability is native to our product. It was one of the key elements that was in scope when the product was developed. Let's see. And the great thing about our product, another item to consider is that we have encryption available. That's native again to the product. The encryption is of the data in flight or at rest. Retention lock. So there's no way to disrupt the backups. One of the sort of the threat vectors that we oftentimes see is if a bad actor is able to gain access into your environment or your network, they could potentially artificially manipulate your clock. Oftentimes with other products, the software that's running would oftentimes leverage the internal clock on the device that it is residing on. And with that vulnerability, bad actors could potentially manipulate the clock in such a manner that it will expire the backups. They'll go in, we're in 2022, they manipulate the clock to reflect 2052. And then suddenly, as the backups begin to spin up, you'll notice that the backups are slowly disappearing. With our solution, we actually avoid this particular threat vector by leveraging a monotonic clock. Now, monotonic clock is not entirely new to us. It's been around for a long time. And essentially what a monotonic clock is think of it as a stopwatch that cannot be manipulated. And it is not privy to or required or incumbent upon the clock that is on the system on which it resides. It is tied to the backups themselves. So there's no way to artificially manipulate the time in such a manner to expire them. And another element that we have available is a logical air gap. Oftentimes, organizations in referencing or leveraging an air gap typically employ a 3-2-1 sort of methodology, where you have 3 copies of a backup on two different media, and oftentimes one of the media is tape, in which case the tape is removed physically from the environment. I don't know about you. I know from my previous days of leveraging tape, recovering of tape can be a bit of a process and take a little bit of time. And so with our approach with a logical air gap, because the data that we've ingested is first immutable, it is an append-only file system. So it does not present itself on the network in any recognizable format, SMB or NFS for that example. And as such, we alleviate the requirements around leveraging tape. Now, unless there's a specific need to do so, yes, we do have integration that allows you to leverage tape if it's a mandated or requirement based on your industry that you reside in. Advanced, sorry, looking for that next button. So, data observability. The ability to monitor your data for ransomware events, sensitive data exposure, and locate indicators of compromise or IOC. Again, as we perform our backups, we are continually monitoring the metadata associated with those backups, and we're able to leverage additional layers of intelligence based on the collection of that metadata and applying a little bit of our product in such a way that provides customers the ability to not only see the potential initiation of a ransomware attack, but also provide customers the opportunity to determine if you have sensitive data that's in scope and out of compliance from within your environment. Oftentimes, with the growth of data, and it's been exploding over the last several years, you'll notice that files contain sensitive data, and the data that's sensitive is out of compliance from within the specific guidelines or models that you have within your environment to lock down that data. I think in the last several years, all of us have seen examples of organizations that have been not only hit by a ransomware attack, but also the leaking of sensitive data. Sony is one example. Apologies for anyone who might work at Sony. That happened a few years back. Home Depot, another example, and the list goes on and on. With our products, and again, with our capabilities around harvesting the metadata, we're able to provide you insights into your posture to determine if you have sensitive data that's out of scope, and if it is, to proactively take the necessary steps to ensure that it is protected so that it is not taken out of your environment for data egress, and then, again, leveraging that as an additional revenue stream for the bad actors that are currently doing the things they do. And an additional layer that we have is specific to leveraging YARO rules. So with our particular product, threat hunting, we're able to leverage YARO rules, and so that you're able to then supply whatever the particular string happens to be to look for and scan your environment to see if you have any IOCs currently within that particular model. Data recovery. So one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the ability to help our customers in the situation where they may have been hit by a ransomware attack, and allow them not allow them, poor choice of words, sorry, but have them leverage the resources available within our product to be able to recover quickly. So we can recover in bulk, or we can leverage a surgical recovery, whether it's your apps, files, whatever the case may be. We want to ensure that our customer is able to recover their data safely by quarantining infected data that's been infected by malware, spinning up VMs as quickly as possible, providing you access to the most recent clean copy of your files so that you're able to maintain business continuity, and recover applications, again, either in bulk or singularly, with pre-built workflows or disaster recovery plans. So one of the other products that we have available currently is what we refer to as app flows, so that essentially allows organizations to preemptively put together a plan, sort of consider it an easy button, so that in the event something were to occur, you simply leverage the plan by clicking the button, so to speak, and then a predetermined set of rules are leveraged so that those workloads then spin up at a DR location. And so on that particular piece, We do have a product that was recently announced at our Forward event a few months ago, and it is our Rubrik Security Cloud. It is a SaaS-based application that brings together all the elements of our positions to protect your cloud-native workloads, your on-prem data center workloads, and your SaaS application specific to M365 on a single managed platform so that you're able to leverage all of the nuances of what we're able to do to ensure that your data is protected so that you're able to, again, get back to a position of good, maintain your business continuity, and ensure that the lights remain on. So that is Rubrik Security Cloud. Quite proud of it. We are extensively doing some training internally amongst the SEs to ensure that we have the proper knowledge to be able to share that with our customers. And so with that, I'll say thank you. Absolutely appreciate your time today. And I'm almost certain that I did not take up the entirety of the 20 minutes. So with that, I'll hand it back over.
Well, we are right at time, Laverne, but I'm going to sneak in a question here because I do think it's an important one. Okay, so question for you, Laverne. Is there, and this is coming from Yoshika, is there a cap on how much data this product is able to cover and protect?
Currently, no. There is no known cap. We do have existing customers specific to the financial industry that are running multiple petabytes, and so our product is delivered on a hyper-converged chassis. So it scales, and as it scales, you have appreciable improvements in performance in terms of its ability around recoverability. So we have no current top end. I'm waiting for the day that we have a customer that hits an exabyte. But I'm sort of looking forward to that, but it hasn't happened yet.
Challenge extended from Laverne to all of you out there. Well, as I said, I do wish we could keep going here. We are running a bit short on time. I do want to ask you before you run, if somebody is looking to get started with Rubrik, and in fact, we did have one person out there, I think it was Mark, who was asking, he's got clients, he might be a consultant that he's also bringing into tools and solutions like Rubrik. So for somebody like him who's looking to pass on information and get to know which clients it's going to be best for, or for someone that's thinking about it for their own organization, how do they get started? What's the best first step to learn about these different solutions at Rubrik?
Absolutely. I wish I had a better answer, but I think the sort of catch-all is go to our website, www.rubrik.com. First, peruse our product to get a little bit of an insight into it, and then click the Contact Us button, and a member of our team will absolutely be reaching out to you so that we can set something up, either in terms of providing you additional information or getting you in contact with a resource internally to begin that conversation to better develop a plan to assist you in whatever it is you may potentially need from us.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, it's simple but true. Go to the website, book a demo, explore. There's lots of great, as we heard, the Rubrik team is fun and lively, so go and connect with them. And there's still some amazing questions in here. I don't know, Laverne, if you have some time to stick around on live chat. I do know for anyone that asked a question, the Rubrik team will be following up with you, so you will get some answers about that. And hopefully, Laverne, we'll get to chat with you again soon. I hope you have a fun day in the office.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, again, and I appreciate the time.
All right, and you can see we've got that poll up for you on the screen. What additional information would you like to get about the Rubrik solution? So take a minute right now and click on that poll. Let Rubrik know how they can follow up with you, because obviously lots of information. There's a lot of things that we didn't get to cover today with Laverne. So please make sure that you're clicking on that poll and get the information, get the follow-up that's going to be most helpful for you wherever you're at in this research discovery phase, implementation, whatever phase of project planning you're in right now. While you're doing that, I'm also going to remind you to head over to the handouts tab. And Laverne and I were just talking about the website being a great place to start. Luckily, it's linked for you right there. We've made it nice and easy. So you can click right into the handouts tab, click on that link, and go start exploring some of those incredible resources and upcoming events available on the Rubrik website. There's a deep dive into backup versus cyber recovery, which is really interesting. Lots of really cool stuff. So go head on over, start clicking around, check that out. Keep that tab open for after we wrap our webinar today, because right now we are going to keep moving things along. And very next, we're going to give away some prizes. So I'll remind you again that you do need to be here and live with us at the MegaCast in order to win. Our next winner of a $300 Amazon gift card today is Ryan Gillot or Gilo. I always feel like I need to pronounce it both ways. I should just pick one and go with it confidently. But it could be Gillot and it could be Gilo. Gilo? There's like 5 different ways to pronounce G. Ryan of California, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Ryan Gillot, I'm going to confidently go with that, of California, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Our very next winner of a Kindle Scribe is Cameron Moore of Nebraska. There's a nice, easy one. Cameron Moore of Nebraska, you have won a Kindle Scribe. Congratulations. Now, to all of our winners, we will be following up with you after we wrap, and I'll remind you again that you are entered to win that Best Question Asked card as long as you keep those questions coming in. So keep asking questions. We'll be reviewing everything asked, even if we don't get to it in a live session after we wrap, and we will follow up with you then. All right, well, we're going to keep things moving right along here and jump into our next awesome presentation on the MegaCast here today. I am so excited to introduce you all to our next wonderful expert speaker from the innovative folks over at Pure Storage. Chad Monteith, Principal Field Solutions Architect at Pure Storage, is here with us. Chad, thank you so much for joining us on the MegaCast today. Now, I know you've got some great info to cover. We definitely want to leave some time to dig into some questions together after you wrap. So I'm going to step back and hand things over to you. Take it away, Chad.
Hello, everybody. Today, I'm looking forward to talking to you about how we can minimize our recovery time and really shrink down those recovery points as much as possible with technology from Pure Storage, really providing you some best practices for bulletproof backup and ultimately ultra-fast recovery. That ultra-fast recovery is the real value that we can provide here, regardless of what topic. User error, application inconsistency, or even a ransomware attack. How we can get your data back, your application, your environment back up faster than what's previously been possible. My name is Chad Monteith, and I'm a principal with our modern data protection practice here at Pure Storage. This ESG report has talked to us about how 87% of organizations that they had interviewed, that they had polled, were concerned that their backup copies could be infected or corrupted by ransomware attacks. And that's a real problem that we want to address, is ensuring that not only is your primary production available for recovery, that it's secure from recovery, but that your backup data is not also infected with that same attack. And what are some strategies that you can help mitigate those situations when they occur? But first, let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of an attack, or the anatomy of a situation that has caused you to lose access, lose availability of your data. Now, from a ransomware perspective, one of the first steps that the attacker is going to do in this piece here is to reconnaissance, or to investigate and assess you as a potential target. They're figuring out what methods they want to use, what are your endpoints, what are the access points, what are social engineering pieces that may be associated with that. They then utilize that for their initial exploitation. It could be an attack on an edge device. It could be an attack on an endpoint. It could be a social engineering attack or an email, that they get a payload into your data center. It gives them the foothold to start a command and control function within there. But once they're in there, we don't really see them start encrypting or issuing their lockdown right away. They're going to start investigating what is in your data center, what is in your environment, what does it look like. Ultimately, they're trying to see where the most valuable assets are, where the most valuable data is that they need to compromise. And they may take days, they may take weeks, they may take months in investigating what your infrastructure looks like and where they are going to do the most damage which ultimately is going to result in them receiving, in their goal, the highest payout. But that can include exfiltrating the data, encrypting the data, using it as something in order to threaten you and provide and force you to provide a payout to them in order for them to not release the information or for them to decrypt the data. What's important is that we want to make sure that we can take and identify the data set, the restore point, if you will, right before that occurs. That's where a lot of our technology and our innovation is going to come into play, is being able to not only lock down immutably the data before that occurs, but also to utilize new technologies, machine learning algorithms and other technologies to help you to know what that clean point in time is so that you can restore to it, and you can restore to it rapidly, ensuring that your backups have that bulletproof capability, that bulletproof property, but also that you have the most critical aspect, the most critical property of rapid restore associated with that. Now, attackers will also go in there and start to clean up after themselves as they start encrypting and exfiltrating your data. There are additional use cases that can be hugely valuable in forensic investigation, where we can take that data set and expose it to your forensic partners so that they can help you identify how the attacker got in, how you locked down, secure it before, and even make a claim against your ransomware insurance provider as well. So with that, it's important to know where the three key areas are where you can prevent or you can detect a ransomware attack. And this is meant to be very high level. The first one is that prevention side there on the left. That's your network edge. That's your monitoring. That's log analysis. That's doing patch management of your systems. That is all focused on preventing an attacker from getting into your system. It's also training social engineering aspects with your employees. Don't click on particular emails. Don't open attachments. Those things that we've been seeing for many, many years associated with that. The second layer that you want to protect from is what we call the intercept section. That's where you are looking for, and you have tools that are looking to identify an attack in progress. This can be network behavior. This can be IO behavior to a particular disk. This can be process behavior. There are technologies that are looking for that. What's important is that before you get to that intercept point, is that you have the property of immutability within your storage infrastructure. Because when that intercept has occurred, you now know that the attacker is in that environment, is in your environment, and you need to go back just ever so slightly in order to get to the point in time before they've started the attack phase of their attack. And then ultimately where Pure sits outside of that is the recovery aspect of your environment. That is where rapid restore comes into play. You go back to that immutable known good copy of your data, but if it takes weeks or months in order to do that, it really has very little value to you. We provide rapid and near instant return to service through instant recovery processes, through snapshot recovery processes, through rapid restore processes to ensure that the most important part of your recovery, which is the time, the recovery time to get your application back up and running, is as small as possible, while ensuring that we can tell you exactly where to restore to with some intelligence and some machine learning algorithms in there that help you say, this is my known good, my golden copy of my data that I can restore to. And one of the foundations that we have in this technology, that immutable protection of your backup that allows us to help take data, Pure in of itself can back up very, very fast. A lot of intellectual property, a lot of development and innovation has gone into making backups very fast. But with Pure Safe Mode, we're now able to take that data, whether it's in your primary production environment or it's in your backup environment, and ensure that it is immutable. And by immutability, what we're saying is that that protected snapshot copy of the data cannot be modified by any process, by any API, by any attacker, or even any administrator. We enforce that lockdown in a compliant manner that can be proven and that meets government compliance requirements, ensuring that you know that that data is untouched at the point in time that we locked it down and created that immutability property on it. And we're locking down who can actually change that. It's a very privileged access model. Just as I said before, administrators and APIs, people with privileged access to the system, you're not able to change that eradication or get rid of data or delete those snapshots. Instead, those policies can only be changed with the interaction from authorized users, authorized designated people, in conjunction with Pure support. The policies that we create within these snapshots can be automated or can be self-driven via an API. So if you've got a process for a critical application where you want a consistent, immutable copy of that on primary storage, the tools are there. The APIs are there. Similarly, if you want a consistent copy for long-term retention, still with that property of immutability, we can actually absolutely provide you with that capability as well, while ensuring that all of the ecosystem pieces around there, securing from tamper, ensuring that pins are secret from multiple users and multiple validation, ensuring that time-based attacks are not viable in these attacks, that we are protected from them as well. It's all part of Pure Safe Mode. And what that allows us to do is to provide you the fastest recovery. The fastest recovery is always a metadata operation, but with Safe Mode on secure primary production storage, knowing which snapshot that you need to recover to and being able to do so as a metadata operation, that metadata operation is always your fastest way to get data back and to restart an application, because you're going to almost immediately be able to hand that back to an application administrator. So that's your first line of defense. But your second line of defense is that rapid restore piece. If for some reason my snapshot is not viable, if I cannot go back to that for whatever reason, then I need to be able to bring that data back as fast as possible. And systems that are designed for that highly parallel nature of restoring deduplicated data can do so faster than anything else. Ultimately, that goal is to shrink down the amount of time it takes for you as a storage or systems administrator or backup administrator to hand that environment off to the upstream application engineers so they can start to restore the service and the application that your business depends upon. And since we have all of this data on Pure technology, and you can configure it to bring those log files, those log data back into the environment, what else is of interest is now those logs can be scanned on demand or after the fact as part of a forensics investigation. You can hand those off directly to your forensics contractors in order to ensure that you're locking down, that you're securing, and that you're not at risk for that type of attack again. Ultimately, protecting your environment comes down to what we call the 5 S's of modern data protection. These are key principles. These are key properties of a modern data protection platform. As I mentioned earlier, the speed aspect of it, we've been innovating on improving the speed of backup for decades. There's a lot of wonderful work that's been done in that. But what we haven't been able to do until Pure has got into this is give it the property of that rapid restore and the ability to have usable instant recovery and clones of the data. And we've been able to deliver this because we take an inherent property of flash and use it to address an inherent property of backup data. That inherent property of backup data is that it's deduplicated. So you can send that very fast. But when it comes to restore or instant recoveries, that's where traditional systems fall down. It's because when you send hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of concurrent connections and sessions back to bring data back, spinning disks and hybrid disk-based approaches simply do not have the physical capability to keep up. And it's not for lack of innovation, it's really a law of physics. You can't spin physical disk spindles fast enough in order to be able to restore that data rapidly. And that's why some of our customers that have invested in Pure for this rapid restore, this instant recovery aspect, have demonstrated with real world numbers what that looks like. One customer, for example, had a ransomware attack. They were not invested in Pure, and it took them weeks to recover that environment. In fact, after just a few days, when they realized that it was going to take weeks to bring the environment back, They stopped the restoration processes, and instead they rebuilt nearly 80% of their environment from scratch in order to get their application back up. And that's not really sustainable or viable, especially as you get to larger scale. They invested in Pure to address that rapid restore use case. Now, on a quarterly basis, they test a rapid restore from a simulated ransomware attack, and they are able to bring up their entire environment within 3 hours. That's the new standard that they have delivered to their business for being able to bring up their entire data center infrastructure in the event of attack. What's interesting, they were actually attacked a second time. You may be asking, how did that 3-hour response window that they had tested quarterly fare with the second attack? Well, in that second attack, they were able to restore services and get the environment back up, not in 3 hours, not in weeks, but they were able to get it back in 15 minutes. And we have examples like this that we highlight at Accelerate conferences and others. But being able to demonstrably prove that is a huge value that we have. The second aspect, the second key property that is important to consider is the one of security, of immutability of the data. Because even if you can back it up fast, or you can restore it fast, if that data is not trusted, if you can't prove that it was immutable, if you can't use tools to identify which backup snapshot is clean, ultimately that golden copy of your data, then it is of lessened value to your business, maybe even of no value to your business. And so that's where we integrate technologies like Safe Mode with our data protection partners to ensure that you've got a locked down, immutable copy that APIs, that attackers, that even administrators are not able to modify. You can identify security operators as well as executives for any changes that have to go call in to make any changes to that infrastructure, ensuring that you've got a compliance enforcement around your security practices. But with all of the challenges that we have within data centers, adding sustainability on top of speed and security is important. And what does that look like? Well, let's talk about it in the context of scale here as well. And so we've built a system, especially with our data protection partners, where you have the property, where you have a disaggregated architecture. That disaggregated architecture allows us to be very deterministic in where we invest in your design. If you need more throughput to back up more applications faster, let's say your business comes to you and says, hey, we're backing this data set up in 8 hours, it needs to be done in 2 hours. We may just need to add throughput on the front end. Similarly, your business may come to you and say, we need to increase the amount of restoration, the amount of protection that we've got on this data set. We're going to increase it from 15 days to 45 or 60 days. And maybe we want an immutable copy in a cloud provider. We can simply add capacity with our disaggregated architecture, and it's immediately available and visible to our data protection partners. You're not necessarily having to invest at the throughput layer. And where this really highlights itself is we had a bank who had actually deployed about 710 gig ports with the hyperconverged platform in order to sustain their modern data protection workload. And it wasn't even providing the property of rapid restore. Their backups were fast. They had a mutable copy of data on their infrastructure. They didn't have rapid restore instant recovery, but they were really consuming a massive amount of ports and power and cooling and infrastructure. Moving to our architecture, we were able to drop that to well under 110 gig ports. That's something like an 80 or 90% reduction in the amount of infrastructure you need to be able to support a rapid restore instant recovery environment that previously they didn't have. That lends itself to how we can substantially reduce cost of environment with infrastructure pieces, improve the scale of your system as well. In fact, our FlashBlade products that we sit behind here range between 1 and 1.3 watts per terabyte. The laptop I'm using to present this here today is probably burning 60, 70, 80, 90 watts just to provide this webinar. That's really low, 1 to 1.3 watts per terabyte that we're getting while providing industry-leading performance pieces. And then all of this is managed with the pure simplicity that we've got across our platform. API integration. Those API integrations are key. You need to be able to tie application, workflows, machine learning analytics pieces, all of these components that really drive, a secure, fast, sustainable, and scalable infrastructure that you can depend on is going to bring your data back as fast as possible. But you get all of our infrastructure pieces and our management pieces associated with that have the property of intuitiveness. You need to be able to manage it easily and easily be able to consume those APIs. These 5 S's are really the foundation of how we see modern data protection strategy: speed, security, sustainability, scale, and simplicity. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you. What a great presentation. We've got a lot of questions coming in, Chad, and I want to jump into those. But before we do, I do want to point out that we've got a poll up on the screen for you all. And what we're looking for is what additional information you would like to get about the Pure Storage solution. What follow-up are you looking for? What of those 5 pillars really sparked your mind and you want to learn a little bit more? So click on the poll there right now. Let Pure Storage know how they can follow up with you. And while you're doing that, Chad and I are going to dig into some questions. You ready to rock here?
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Okay, so I want to start with this one, and I'm being a little sneaky here because I'm reading a question that has about 5 questions included in it. Douglas, gold star for most questions included in one question. So I'm going to read this out, and you can chunk it out however you like there, Chad. Okay. So Douglas's question: what are FlashArray and FlashBlade, and what are the features and differences? How do snapshot backups work with Microsoft SQL Server? And what are the different types of database backups and recovery models used in SQL Server? How does SQL Server affect full system backups, especially with virtual machines? And how can snapshot backups be used in such scenarios? Wow.
That is a long one, and I'm glad it is written down in front of me so that I didn't have to write all those questions down. But Douglas,
bullet point notes.
A great set of questions there, and so let me answer the first one here. So the question around what are FlashArray and FlashBlade. So FlashArray is our block storage product line that is focused on the high performance, low latency transactional workloads. So FlashArray is the component of our product line where you're going to put, like you mentioned on here, database workloads like SQL servers, virtual machines are going to be hosted on FlashArrays, data types like that are latency sensitive, transactional oriented workloads are going to go on FlashArray. And we've got a number of product lines in there that we can dig in on a subsequent call as to what they are and where they fit. FlashBlade utilizes the same underlying flash technology. We call it our DFMs, our data fabric modules. That's really the crux of our intellectual property here at Pure. And instead of presenting the data over a block interface, we present it with networked file and object interfaces. We call it our unified fast file and object platform. So S3 from an object storage perspective, or NFS or Windows SMB from a file share perspective. So those are where the 2 products fit. One more targeted low latency block, one targeted on scale out, high performance, also low latency file and object components. So how does that fit with SQL Server? Well, there are, in a modern data protection strategy, there are multiple layers that you want to utilize to protect an application like SQL Server, or for that case, any other database or even virtual machine application. You have, one, the ability to take SQL Server either consistent or crash consistent snapshots on top of the FlashArray. You can, we actually have a number of scripts that we've published on GitHub. So if you're familiar with GitHub, you can look up Pure Storage Open Connect and you can see what the process and the interfaces are that work with them. So you can take an application or a database consistent snapshot on the Flash array. Similarly, where FlashBlade comes into place is that you can utilize native SQL dumps in order to write a parallelized backup to FlashBlade. Generally, that is done over SMB. There's a number of white papers on our website that talk about how to split that up, how to do multiple streams, how to write that backup very expeditiously to FlashBlade. Where our data protection partners come into place is they add an additional layer of control and integration with that. So many of them, many of which you've heard on in other sessions presented today, will integrate with SQL VSS. And what VSS, the Volume Shadow Services, is allows a host-based agent, whether that's an agent that sits on a virtual machine like InGuest or sits on bare metal hardware, to take a very efficient VSS SQL Server consistent snapshot. And then it will utilize its own technology, its own methods, to take that VSS delta from the file system and transmit that to the backup application's final media, which in general is also FlashBlade. So you can mix and match with our technology based upon what you need. If you've got something that needs, a native SQL dump for some reason, you can absolutely use that and we'll support that. If you like the integrations that you get from some of our other data protection partners, many of which on this call we have integrations with, then you can utilize their host-based agents in order to write that data out. Many of them also have the ability to do array consistent snapshots. So where that becomes powerful is their host agent can go in and it can instruct, because it's aware of VMware and SQL, it can put SQL Server into an application consistent backup state, issue a snapshot of the virtual machine hosting it. That will, take a consistent copy of that whole VM as well as the database in it on a snapshot that's on the flash array. You can use that to really reduce the amount of time and risk for VMware stunning issues for highly transactional databases on virtual machines, and then go back that data up directly off of the flash array to your backup vendor. So I've mentioned a whole lot of different methods here. Definitely worthy of a deeper dive if anybody's interested. We can get some of our SQL and our backup specialists to dig into those details. But hopefully you heard one piece, or at least one or two sentences out of that answer that piqued your interest. And we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, in your defense, giving a lot of solutions to a multi-layered question. So that was great and a really wonderful answer. Unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap it up there. I wish we could keep going, but I do want to let you know that you got a couple of high fives from the audience out there. A lot of folks really resonating and enjoying the information. I think Prashant said you made his day. So some really happy
Wonderful.
folks out there. And for those folks out there that are excited and do want to jump in, Chad, what do you want them to do as their first step to getting started with Pure Storage?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've got a lot of resources, solution guides, best practices that we've got published on our website. So I think the first step is if you're interested in something specific like SQL Server, our website, GitHub, tremendous resources to get you a ground, sort of that introduction to us, that ground level introduction to what we're doing here at Pure. And then reach out to your Pure team. We've got a wide range, a very large and robust set of specialists, everything from data protection to the databases like SQL and Oracle themselves. Reach out to us and we can have some one-on-one conversations to really dive deep into the problems that you're trying to solve.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Chad. We really appreciate your time today, and thanks to your team for sticking around. I know they're going to be answering some questions on live chat. I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to keep things moving forward here because we have a quick prize giveaway, and then we're going to move along to our next awesome presentation. I'm leaving that poll up there, and I'm also going to remind you one last time to head on over to the Handouts tab, and you can grab the Pure Storage Modern Data Protection Solutions. It is a great follow-up to what we just talked about with Chad. You can learn a little bit more about the cost of data breach and how you can move past those more siloed legacy solutions and get into maybe a more modern idea or strategy at your organization. So go check out that handout tab and make sure you're getting these resources to follow up on these conversations. I said prize giveaway. I know your ears all just perked right up there. So let's go ahead and give away. We're going to do a $300 Amazon gift card and then a Kindle Scribe. And the $300 Amazon gift card going to someone who's here and present and live with us at the MegaCast is Dennis Thibodeau. Dennis Thibodeau of Tennessee, you have won a $300 Amazon gift card. Maybe Thibodeau. Could be Thibodeau. And then going to Thomas Durst. Always has to be one name that's hard for me to pronounce. Thomas Durst is getting a Kindle Scribe. Thomas Durst of South Carolina. So congratulations to Dennis Thibodeau of Tennessee and Thomas Durst of South Carolina. And we will follow up with our winners after we wrap. Now, don't forget, there's a few more chances to win, plus that best question card from each session. So keep getting those questions in, because not only is it awesome and brings up the whole conversation here, but you also have a chance to win that $50 Amazon gift card. All right, well, speaking of awesome, let's go ahead and move along in our presentation, because up next, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce you all to not one, but two amazing expert presenters here to chat with us today on the MegaCast, and that is Lance Boley, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Cohesity, and Jonathan Mayer, Field Technical Director at Cohesity. Lance and Jonathan, thank you both so much for being here with us today. I know you have some awesome content lined up for us. I can't wait to dive in. So, guys, take it away.
All right, great. Thank you. So as was mentioned, we're here to talk about the confidence and speed and what key elements are needed for a recovery. So I'm Lance Boley, Product Marketing here at Cohesity. Thank you for joining us today for this session. And just wanted to kind of talk about what we're going to cover today. So what does a traditional recovery objectives, what do those look like? How has the recovery objective changed in today's world? How can we strengthen, or how can you strengthen your recovery objective? And then we'll wrap up with some, we'll do a bit of a wrap up and some questions. So I'm going to turn it over now to Jonathan for his introduction and any opening remarks he has for today. Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, Lance. So I'm Jonathan Mayer. I am a field technical director here focused on security. And, what that means is that I work closely with, both our really large customers, our product engineering teams, and most importantly, our cyber response team. So, as we talk about just what recovery looks like, oftentimes my focus is a little bit more around ransomware, wipers, those cyber threats and things. But really, when we talk about recovery, it's easy to get a little lost in certain subsets when there's sort of bigger themes that apply across the board. And so, the key there is that it's specifically around security. There are a lot of myths and misconceptions and things that people don't necessarily think about when they're coming up with a strategy. I can't count how many times I've spoken with a prospect or a customer, and they say, we do a DR test every year, and it went well last time, or we've got a few tweaks to make, but we're in a good shape. And that's fine. I mean, it's certainly good to have those DR plans and to have some level of preparedness, but it really sort of misses the point that in today's environment, there are a lot more disruptive threats that are out there that are going to be it's a different dynamic, because it is a dynamic response that takes place with these more security focused events. And so when we talk about RPO and RTO, it's one thing, there's just the basics of understanding what are your critical applications and testing them and making sure you have the right people involved. But, through kind of the security lens, there's a lot of framework and structure. We'll talk about NIST here in a little bit. But really the key to all of this is the thing, it's easy to get lost in the details. The thing that matters more than anything else is, what are those critical business functions and what is the acceptable level of risk? Because when we boil it all down, security and everything around it is really all about managing risk. And so once we kind of get focused on that, everything else is just a easy decision of, is this increasing my risk or decreasing my risk? And so that's why oftentimes we speak about things in terms of speed and confidence, because the faster you're able to make informed decisions in these kinds of events, the less risk there is through your recovery. And I mean, we'll kind of go through some examples at the end, like Lance says, but just because you have good backups and good protection strategies doesn't necessarily mean that you've mitigated risk unless you've proven out that you're able to recover in a timely fashion. Back to you, Lance.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, let's kind of take a look at what traditionally, kind of some of the things Jonathan was talking about. I think we've all seen a traditional RTO timeline, right? You're running along business as usual. There's an incident, services go offline, and then there's an amount of time that takes place before those things come back online. When we look at the recovery point objective, it's especially important when it comes to data backup and recovery, because organizations, especially those that conduct a lot of transactions over the course of the day, right, they're going to need those backup copies to occur on a more frequent basis, maybe almost in real time. So the actual data loss is, as small as possible, so they're not losing those transactions. So, Jonathan, maybe you can give us a quick look at, you gave us a quick look at the myths and misconceptions, but what about when it comes to backup and recovery, especially with today's, cyber attack climate, ransomware? What are some of the things that we're hearing out in the market with customers? Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's great to already seeing some questions kind of come in that feed right into this. So, that's the key thing here, is you have to define your recovery point objectives in a manner that accurately, provide accurate or I guess relevant coverage to your recovery time objective. And so that's very much a conversation between, security, the operations teams, and the business, because ultimately the thing that matters is, there is some function within your organization that is kind of that is the heart of it. And if those things are offline, you aren't going to be able to continue operations, and there is a time limit on that, at which point your business can't sustain itself, or your organization can't sustain itself. And so when we've watched, whether it's when we've been involved with events and just past history, seeing what kind of circumstances require companies to pay ransoms, Colonial Pipeline is a great example, right? That happened a while back. They had good backups. It wasn't that they didn't have protection. It was that they couldn't actually get the backups recovered in a timely enough manner to be worthwhile. They were losing too much money in the time it would take to recover. So they said, you know what, it's a painful decision. We're going to go ahead and we're going to pay, and we're going to build systems from cleanly. And so it's a lot of those, just really picking apart the details of, are there, you might think you can go to paper to get by for a little while, but you might realize once you start going through a simulation that, oh, wait a minute, we overlooked there's a system, or there's a source code repository, there are other dependencies that need to be factored into this plan in order to get it right. So, as far as defining the RPOs and RTOs, it really comes down to, how much data are you actually willing to lose, right? Which is one of those hard questions. And then from a recovery standpoint, that's one of the Cohesity superpowers, and we'll kind of walk through a live scenario of that. But because of the way that we're architected, and because of just the way that services are distributed across our platform, we've seen it time and time again that we are able to present
more data sources back quicker than anything else out there. Is it going to be as performant as the primary system that it came off of? Not necessarily, but for those core business functions, being able to just get access to them quickly can make all the difference. And some of the things that aren't necessarily in the questions asked aloud is, what happens if the tool sets you rely on for your response are unavailable? So we've got a growing number of customers that actually kind of have a repository of those tools and key information details that they store locked up in Cohesity, because they know that through a variety of mechanisms that they can make that available when they need it. So yeah, it's pretty challenging stuff, and candidly, we don't solve all of these problems, right? We're not going to help you obtain Bitcoin, but it's really important that as you put together your response plan, that you understand where those gaps are, and could you pay? If you did pay, what would the regulatory ramification be? Do you have to pay a brokerage fee? Who has signing authority? There are a lot of these kinds of things that come into play that are way beyond just a standard, I need to back these things up, and can I stick them over here in this other data center? And so to kind of further put a little more structure around this, I know Lance referenced NIST earlier. SANS has a similar one, Pickerel. So a lot of times when we're actually sitting down and talking with teams about it, how do they make sense of all this stuff? There's a lot of components in here, and like I said, our strength is really in that recovery area. We've seen it time and time again where we've been able to bring large environments back in completely clean environments. And that's another thing is, a very common theme, especially in more mature operations, is, regardless of what is going on in the primary environment, they have a dedicated kind of clean space to be able to recover into, so that they know if they can observe what's going on, make sure that whatever IOCs that they took into consideration as you're cleaning things out have been successfully mitigated, and that they can get sign off from the application teams that these systems are good to go and ready to go back into production. And in many cases, because production is no longer a trusted place, have your new routes to be able to deliver those data services. Of course, recovery depends on protection, right? And so while we focus very much on that side of things, the scale and the visibility and the capability that our platform provides, it provides a lot of additional information through this whole process to help teams respond quicker, provide information across the different groups that are involved with the incident response. And that's a key part of why we've got our security alliance, that we just announced not too long ago, because we understand that this really is an industry problem, and then when we come together and solve these things from an industry level and not just at a product integration level, it really makes a big difference, and it changes the economics of things. I mean, we've actually seen, there's a Wall Street Journal article that was published not too long ago that ransomware gangs are actually having to lay people off because they're not as profitable as it used to be, and it's because people are doing the right thing. And so, to kind of dig in a little bit deeper on what a modern RPO and RTO look is, Lance is going to kind of step through what are some of the additional details that might be considered for that.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan. I mean, really, for a modern RTO, it looks very similar to a traditional one, except we're kind of getting the services back online. That time frame from when the incident occurred is shrinking. I think the bigger one here is the modern RPO. It does look a bit different. I mean, incidences can be caused by more than just faulty equipment like they used to be. You know, hard drive fails, we replace it. We got to be back up online, those kind of things. We've got bad actors, ransomware, as Jonathan's mentioning, and really more in play today. So while the data lost, we still want that to be as small as possible. The recovery is going to include additional steps, right? We need to have a data verification. As Jonathan mentioned, we need clean data. We need to make sure that we're not restoring that bad code or those hidden or embedded ransomware executables back into the production environment. So we need that verification. We need that clean room so the recovery takes place cleanly to bring the business back online. Click it. There we go. And as Jonathan mentioned, we do utilize the NIST framework, right? We take a multi-layered approach to data protection, and we feel this is really the best way to safeguard your data against ransomware attacks and ensure that rapid recovery. It comes down to three important concepts that we at Cohesity just build in. The first one is protect, right? Reduce your attack surface and prevent your backups from becoming an additional target in a ransomware attack. We deliver a unique combination of immutable backup snapshots, data lock capabilities, role-based access control, multi-factor authentication, quorum, and many more to help prevent backup data from becoming part of the ransomware attack. Second is detect. We utilize machine learning to discover ransomware and help to provide visibility into those anomalies, if I could say it, by monitoring data during the ingestion in the backup process. And integration with providers like Palo Alto, CloudStrike, BigID, Cisco, and others really help provide visibility and insights into the ransomware, changes of the data. Jonathan mentioned IOCs, malware, sensitive data classification, really just to give you that visibility of the data, of your data. And then finally, really probably the most important, right, recovery. So cyber threats, internal or external, they happen. And that's why recovery has to be predictable and it has to be quick. Cohesity speeds the process of backing up your ransomed enterprise data and applications at scale. In addition to the immutable backups that we offer, we've got multiple policy-based methods that help isolate your mission-critical data and give you that last good copy and make sure that is secured. This helps you to meet your unique recovery and security requirements. You can isolate your data, as Jonathan was mentioning, either in Cohesity Managed or Cloud Vault, Cohesity Fort Knox. You can replicate it to another immutable cluster. You can use tape out for offsite storage, for Iron Mountain. Whatever the case may be, we've got you covered. And all of these help you by delivering a comprehensive cyber resilient solution to help you get you back up and get your business back up as quickly as possible.
So that's a great overview.
Yeah, go ahead, Jonathan. Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate the way that's laid out because all too often, it is a team sport at this point, right? And I work very much. I came from the operations side, but I've also worked very closely in the security operator realm. And when you're looking at it from the security perspective, especially from the leadership down, I mean, it is a strategy, right? And you're trying to make sure that you've got the right kind of big buckets in place, but at some point you actually have to go implement things. And so having that alignment between, objectives that I can actually implement and then how it maps into the overall strategy is really helpful to, especially depending on where I am and, where organizations are in that maturity. And just real quick, I'm going to walk through here in just a second an actual event that we had with where we helped a customer recover from an attack, and it was pretty significant, right? And there were a lot of lessons learned there because this has been a while and we've added a lot of capabilities. But just one quick note, and this kind of addresses one of the questions in the chat, is there are, when you talk about RPOs and RTOs, the RPO Cohesity can support everything from essentially real time, where we're doing journaling of VMs and then keeping track of those across the sites, or it's snapshot based or doing archival or whatever. So I mean, there is a wide range of granularity available. Specifically, the question got called out about site continuity. That product is intended to be a way to orchestrate changes across that application stack, because like we talked about, right, these are not just individual VMs. A recovery process is always two-step, because you've got the underlying infrastructure that goes into place, and then you've got the application that lays on top of that, and oftentimes there are a lot of dependencies that need to be addressed. And so being able, and that's one of the beauties of a software platform that's all API driven, is being able to build in the automation components of that, and being able to present those back out in a simple way so that the teams can practice over and over and over and make sure that as they make application changes, that those changes actually get translated into that recovery, the recovery run books, so that when they actually need to take care of them or need to take action with them, that they're able to. And this is perfectly exemplified in this particular instance. So this is a healthcare provider, and in their case, this is a while back. So Riot got in, and typical situation. It's over the weekend. A user clicked on a malicious file in an email, so they got phished. Pretty common entry point. And through that, the malware was able to get a foothold in the environment and a lot of lateral movement. And the trigger was actually that the application team was doing maintenance that weekend, and they had noticed some slowness in the application. And so they started to get into troubleshooting steps with their vendor. And it was only then that they realized, wait a minute, something's not happening right. And so it was unfortunately pretty slow, and it came out after the fact that there was a little bit of an education issue, that we had been alerting that we saw a bunch of malicious activity in the backups. It's just that the alerting had not been forwarded appropriately, and it was going into a mailbox that nobody was monitoring. So I saw that was another question in the chat. Is we absolutely recommend, and that's a huge part of our integrations, is we can send different syslog threads into SIM and SOAR tools. I mean, the more visibility you can get on what's happening, whether it's audit logs or events, the better off it can be. And so as we detect anomalous events, we will forward those out. We're going to lock things down to the best, within our system, but it ultimately is going to come down to teams coming together to respond to those things. So in this case, they did finally become aware of the attack, but unfortunately by then, the entire environment is encrypted. So, the number one, I guess, advantage you've got when something like this starts happening is if you catch any backup platform that provides any kind of detection like this, it is a trailing indicator, right? You want to detect that on your XDR, your EDR, your front end, your IDSs, all of your proactive kind of out in the live production environment, and all of those defenses, that's where you want to detect things. Unfortunately, that's not always how it plays out. And so if you detect it in the backups, your best defense is move quickly, right? Be able to understand the scope, the breadth, and be able to start moving quickly. And so in this case, unfortunately, the whole environment was locked up before they were alerted to anything. And that equated to 2,500 systems, right? And all of their mission critical applications were down, and they did not have clean communication. You know, this was a bad situation. Had done some of the just basic things in terms of multi-factor authentication, and you know, they had set good practices. They had data lock turned on the cluster, and so they had that really strong footing to start to build back from. And what that actually equated to for them, and specifically because Cohesity can not, you know, just be, you know, we can present virtual machines and all those systems back quickly, but we can also present file systems back quickly. In their case, patient data was a really key thing. And so they actually made a point whenever we did our debrief and lessons learned, that the fact that we could bring back all of their patient data, you know, the critical files, near immediately and put it on our file system in a data lock manner, that was really, really powerful, because now the doctors could actually access patient files and do what they needed to do, being able to stand up the VMs very quickly. You know, the overall response, or the overall recovery took a long time, but to get the critical functions back up and running, you know, they've repeatedly let us know that they really appreciated our ability to get these core infrastructure, you know, DNS, Active Directory, all those things up and running quickly, and because that's the foundational stuff for everything else. And they've let us know they would never have been able to sustain this with any other platform, and you know, we've got a really strong partnership as a result of that. So again, you know, a huge part of this success is us being able to take advantage of our own cyber response team, because, you know, in this case, there were missteps from the customer side, but that's okay. You know, they had a resilient platform that had that capability, had the breadth, and it had the performance to drive an appropriate response. And, you know, when you couple that with the experience from our response team, you know, that buys you a lot of ability to recover, even when you don't make all the perfect moves up front. So I'm going to take a second here, you know, kind of summarize real quickly on, you know, we understand not everybody's going to come over and join Cohesity, and that's fine. But we do want to, like I said before, this is an industry level solution. And so regardless of, you know, where you ultimately find your solution, these are some of the things that, you know, lessons learned that we like to share, and make sure, like, it's all about openness. Have the conversations between the business, between security, between the operations teams, you know, all those, and test them. It's really make sure that you test them. And then here's kind of a higher level view from our perspective of, you know, as we've got the scale, we've got the performance, we've got the intelligence in the platform, and that gives us a unique ability to provide more insight. So as we've continued to evolve, you know, things like the classification of data. So as you're recovering, it's important to also be able to understand, you know, if there is sensitive data involved, because the part of that response team may be public relations or HR, or, you know, somebody that needs to make a public statement about what data was impacted, or threat scanning, you know, being able to get a more time-based look at, you know, how the threat did move through the environment, and then, you know, being able to look quickly and easily. We have, you know, part of our partnership with Qualys is that we automatically pipe in threat feeds into the platform. So just out of the box, you have access to over 100,000 IOCs, and those are updated on a regular basis. So, you know, it makes it very simple. It's just a couple of clicks to say, here's a system that I have reason to believe might have an issue. Go ahead and scan it, and then that's more information about the environment that you can then share back with the rest of the teams. So I'm gonna.
Oh man,
thank
you so much. Yeah, that was a lot of information. That was so great. I want to thank you guys so much for that presentation. And the good news and bad news is we have no time for Q&A, which is bad news. The good news is you were answering a lot of them as we went through on the fly, which is very impressive to be able to present and read your own questions coming in. So you didn't even need me here. You guys moderated yourself. Before you take off, though, yeah, I do. I'm going to keep you here for one last second, Lance Jonathan. I want you to answer for our audience out there, for anyone out there that wants to jump in, wants to get started with Cohesity. What do you recommend as their first step?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I would say call us. Let's just have a conversation. Everybody's in a different place. Everybody has different priorities. The less you believe, the more I'd like to talk to you.
That's amazing. I love that. What a fantastic call to action for the audience out there. So for all you non-believers, you have now challenge extended. Thank you both so much for joining us here today. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And to everyone out there, if you didn't already see, there's a poll up on the screen here for you. What we're looking for is what additional information you would like to get about the Cohesity solution. So please do take a minute right now and click on that poll. Let Cohesity know how they can follow up with you. Ricky just chimed in and said, always start with a demo. I like that, Ricky. That's great advice. A demo is a great way to start. All right, I'm going to leave that up for a quick second here. We need to get rolling into our dare I say, last presentation of the day. But before we do that, I am going to give away a quick prize. I'm also going to remind you to head on over to the Handouts tab, click on the Cohesity link, and you can grab the Cohesity Evaluation Guide, Ransomware Readiness, an in-depth evaluation guide covering how to strengthen your data security and cyber resiliency. It is a very cool read, jam-packed with info, so go check that out. And our next prize giveaway, we're going to do a $300 gift card, Amazon gift card, and a Kindle Scribe. Again, you do need to be here and present with us at the MegaCast. Our next winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Eric Atkinson. Eric Atkinson. Oh, I'm just going to put that poll back up for anyone that's still answering there. Eric Atkinson of North Carolina, you have won an Amazon gift card. And Joseph Jules of Massachusetts, you have won a Kindle Scribe. Again, that's Eric Atkinson of North Carolina getting an Amazon gift card, and Joseph Jules of Massachusetts getting a Kindle Scribe. Congratulations to you, and we will be in touch with you after we wrap to talk to you about your prizes. Also, those best question cards coming in hot after we wrap, so keep those questions pouring in. I'm seeing some great ones today. The competition is fierce. All right, well, as I said, I don't know how this has happened already, but here we are at our very last presentation of the day, which is sad. But here's the happy part. We get to wrap up with Commvault. I am very excited to introduce our last presenter of the day, and that is Rick Gay, Principal Technologist at Commvault. Rick, thank you so much for joining us here today as our grand finale. I am very excited to hear from you, from the Commvault crew. I know we want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to hand things on over to you. Take it away, Rick.
Hey, thanks a lot. Thanks for having us out. Happy to be here today. I'm going to jump right in. We do have a lot to cover, as you can expect. My methodology is going to be a little different. Rather than just responding with minimizing RTO and RPO, how do we avoid that? And how do we get to those places? And some of the things that we've seen across our 100,000 customers, we have a cyber incident that happens just about 1.2 times per day. It's pretty frequent right now. And the landscape's changing. They're not just encrypting anymore. Now they're trying to egress people's data and hold it hostage. So a couple of quick things to understand about Commvault. We are not a hardware box. We are a software, and it is a unified code base. So whether you consume that as SaaS, as an appliance, as a build your own, it's going to be the same code. Whether it's deployed on-prem and cloud, you have the same capabilities. So if you're in a multi-cloud environment and still have an on-prem, we have the ability to do everything that I talk about today across that entire landscape in a single dashboard. So we've had a little different strategy here. Commvault's been around a long time, as a lot of you know. We've been protecting three-letter agencies that have been attacked by state-level actors for a long time. We are IL4 plus and IL6 certified, meaning CIA, NSA, Ministry of Defense overseas, those kind of environments. We're dark site capable. So the capabilities that I talk about today, realize that these do not require you to be connected to an internet. You don't have to send your backup metadata up for validation and scanning to a third party or to us for that matter. So all of the behavior analysis, the file analysis, the malicious software, that's all done on-prem or in the cloud, in your tenant, I should say. We have the ability to make just about any storage out there immutable. We participate with over 87 different storage types, and we integrate with them at their array API level, and that includes public cloud. So when it comes to protecting applications, on-prem we've done a long time. Over the last couple of years, we've seen a lot of folks come out from behind those firewalls. You know, they aren't behind the Palo Alto in the data center anymore. Now they're behind a Linksys at home, just like I am right now, except I'm not on a Linksys, and I'm not going to say what I'm on. But those edge computers, to protect those, this is where 56% of the threat comes in, is somebody clicks a link. Just like Cohesity had said a second ago. Somebody clicks a phishing link and they VPN in, and before you know it, you're hammered. So we decided to not send that protection back to the data center. You don't need to tunnel back in to get good backups. You can actually just send that straight to our cloud SaaS offering, even if you're using the complete product on-prem. The SaaS offering being hosted in either Azure or Oracle Cloud allows you to point those laptops over their own internet connections, as well as any SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS apps you might have, Salesforce, Dynamics, M365, those kind of things. But we also made a strategic acquisition about a year and a half ago of a company called TrapX. So you can see those purple traps around the perimeter. And this is us trying to shift our detection capability forward in the process. What we found is everybody knows about the 35-day plus dwell time that somebody's got in the environment. But we found that they were egressing data in as little as 2 hours. So this acquisition has allowed us to place these devices, and these are virtual devices that can emulate many, many things in your environment, and it's a trap. As soon as they interact with it, we're generating a forensics log, we're tracking what lateral movement they have, we're tracking any commands they're running, if they're using Metasploit, for example, what the return on the command was, what the credentials are, the source IP, those kind of things. So this is much more proactive than taking a backup and then scanning it. So we want to try to get forward in the motion so that we don't have to do a massive restore. If we have to do the massive restore, I don't think you're going to find a solution that can do it faster than Commvault because we are hardware agnostic. We've taken security very seriously for over a decade. You can see we've participated in a lot of the different certification paths out there. We have more than enough to meet anybody's cyber insurance requirements. Like I said, we protect some three-letter agencies at a very dark level, we'll put it that way. And this has enabled us to just stay ahead of the curve. We have over 900 developers. We have cash in hand, so we do have the time and the resources to pursue the latest, greatest necessary certifications to make sure that we're doing the right thing to protect your data. So I'll talk about ThreatWise first. We'll start at the perimeter and work our way in. So ThreatWise is designed to dilute the attack surface, expose those lateral movements, and accelerate your recovery by minimizing the amount of data that gets damaged. So if you consider your network, there's a bunch of different objects, VMs, databases, business functions, things like that. And when the end user clicks on that phishing link and their credentials are compromised, the first thing they're going to do is go blast those credentials against anything they can in the environment and see where it plugs in. Now, the old school way of doing this was with a honeypot. You might have 50 machines in your DMZ and one honeypot. So you got 50 lockdown hardened boxes and one that's wide open. Hackers are smart. They're going to see that and they're not going to touch it. They know it's a trap. But what if you had 50 real machines and 50 fake ones? Now it looks like you're a sloppy IT org, and they're going to go after the low-hanging fruit because time is of the essence. And when we do red team, blue team pen tests with third parties, this has been extremely effective at detecting red team penetration. And what this means to you is that we can sever their connection and start the incident response process much earlier in the cycle to avoid that data damage. And it doesn't just spoof machines. So the way this works is you would download an OVA, This can run on multiple different hypervisors, but it's a VM. It can run in public cloud. And this VM can support up to 512 concurrent sensors. There's no limit on how many appliances. We don't charge by that. We charge by the sensor. It's extremely reasonably priced. And that can either emulate a device, an object, or even a full system. And they're fully interactive. So if you'd like to see a demo, just click on this at the end. You don't have to even be a Commvault backup or data protection customer to use this. This is just another tool that you can add to your layered defense mechanism. We also have the ability to place lures. What a lure is a fake asset within one of your real assets. So if you think about your workstations or your endpoints that are out there, we can put fake browser history, fake Active Directory credentials, fake cache, fake host files, all these kind of things, and they'll be invisible and seamless to your end users. But as soon as somebody touches it, we're going to alert your security system because we know the only reason you would touch that is for malicious activity. This all ties in to the NIST framework of identify, protect, monitor, respond, and recover. We've built a security assessment dashboard, and this allows you to, at a glance, make sure that you're doing those best practices. I think I just heard somebody hadn't correctly configured the product, and that's more common than you might think. You know, as new versions of things are released over the years, people lose track. They don't get updates from their teams. You know, they're not necessarily following the new best practice when it comes out. So this will immediately at a glance allow you to look at the Commvault environment and make sure that you've hardened things. Is multi-factor turned on? Are you using the honeypots within all of our assets? Do you have your data stores locked down? Are you encrypting? All of those tasks, and you can see there is one with a warning, and what that is a console timeout. Well, you can see there's a blue hyperlink to the right that says set the timeout. So very easily at the glance, you can take a look at your threat profile for the Commvault infrastructure, and you can address it right there. Layer that on top of the MFA and the role-based access control. We've been multi-tenant and supported MSPs for a long time now. So we have very fine-grained control, and we have several workflows in place, like the multi-auth workflow. And what this is basically a nuclear launch code style process that you can assign to any activity within our environment. You simply check that restricted box, and what will happen if someone tries to do something, and in this case, they're trying to delete a workflow. If somebody tries to delete it and it's restricted, it's going to route that to an approver. The approver can either approve or cancel it. If they approve it, it will execute in our system immediately. If they cancel, it will immediately tag to your SIEM as an audit item. And it'll say somebody attempted to delete something that they shouldn't have, and it was rejected by the approver. And that can allow some further investigation so that if somebody did compromise the credentials of one of your admins and starts going in trying to delete the storage or turn things off, you're going to be able to catch that right away and prevent them from actually executing the task. We also have a product built in. Now, this is a free one. This is called File Data Analysis. Now, this allows us, with our agent on your filers or your NAS, to, in real time, build a machine learning pattern of the last 30 days of activity. And this is a rolling 30 days. So what happens is this allows us to detect certain things in your environment. Number one, what if the HR person goes and starts looking up customer payment data? Probably not within their role to do that. So we're going to flag on things like that. We're going to flag on file entropy. We're going to flag on any kind of suspicious activity that's out of the norm. If files start growing, if the change rates are more than what they've been, we're going to create those flags. This is all tunable, of course, to your environment, and this is all done without an internet connection. But this will automatically alert the SIEM if we see anything odd, and I'll get into it a little bit more here. So we generate a pattern of that behavior, and you can see in this case, there's a lot of suspicious files. And as soon as you click on the red section in that pie chart, it's going to take you to all those files that are flagged. And you can see what's suspicious about them. You can actually preview them in a safe memory space. So in this case, we've opened up what should have been a docx. So this should look like a Word doc, and you can see that it's got an AES encryption tag. So this file was encrypted. And we can get a timestamp. We can see that that had significant change, and it was flagged for that, and it was flagged for high entropy. It is no longer a docx, or no longer representing the data of a docx. So you have two options here. You can mark it safe, which would be bad, or you can mark it corrupt. And you can do this en masse for that point in time. And this really assists with that RTO more than you would think. If you can identify your blast radius and your ground zero, this minimizes the level of effort for you to decide what is restorable and what is not. And we have the ability to en masse take that point in time, look at all the files that were changed within, 10, 15 minutes of that point in time, and at a click, mark them all as corrupt. Now let's play a scenario out. You have a petabyte of NAS data. 30% of it gets impacted. We don't have to throw out that restore point. Now, of course, the backends today are all going to be immutable, which means we can't delete that out of the backup either. But by marking this corrupted, what happens is if you choose to restore to that day, that 30% that was impacted that is now marked corrupt will automatically be restored to the last known good within our backup set. So your risk of reinfection goes down drastically, and your speed to recovery goes up drastically. And Commvault doesn't have a performance limitation, being that we're not based on an appliance. We can give you the specs of our appliance, but if you're really looking for a high performance restore, we don't feel that HCI is the right solution. We partner with people like Pure and Vast, and we're able to drive throughput numbers that are absolutely incredible. We're talking petabytes per hour can be achieved through Commvault, and we have customers doing it today. So regardless of what the RPO and RTO is, and of course we have things like live sync where we can do an RPO of 0, whatever your latency on your network is, where we're live streaming. We can do snapshot based at the array, all those kind of things. But when it comes to full performance, I don't think we can be beat. And this is a recent addition. So our .30 came out. We have a cadence of 2 releases per year. One will always be an extended release, which means we'll support that release for a minimum of 5 years. When you start looking at these new releases, they have a ton of enhancements. Like I said, we've got 900 developers. We have a healthy customer community. We've provided over 400 customer requests for modification of code this year, just this fiscal year. So threat analysis works a little differently. Threat analysis is something that we wrote in partnership with Avira Antivirus. We created an antivirus SDK for Commvault that allows us to take the backup and then run it through an index. And that index would run antivirus in a protected memory space to search for known malicious code. This defeats things like rootkit exploits where your online tool didn't detect it, but if we were able to take that file offline, isolate its memory space, and then run a scan, maybe it would have. And this does have a cost because we are not an antivirus company. And to be clear, we're not a security company either. We can certainly refer you to some experts if needed, but we do have a lot of enhanced capabilities. We do what we can to add a layer to your environment. When we get a threat, you can see the red threats, same kind of interface as the file analysis. We try to keep it easy. When you click on that red part of the pie chart and look at the infected files, you get a listing of the files. You can also see the threat name. So we can see those threat signatures, what we're detecting, the amount of detections over time, of course, and we can immediately recover those files to their last known good, which would be before this threat was detected. The way we do that is we actually run a curation job where we compare today's file versus previous versions of that file. And we're using the Google anti-plagiarism algorithm in reverse. We want to see plagiarism. We want today's file to look similar. You might have changed a bunch of things. You might have added tables to a spreadsheet, but it should plagiarize the original file. If it does not, we're going to flag it for entropy. Same kind of thing going on here. We run a curation, and we see when was the last time that file was clean, and we're going to recover back to that known good automatically so that you're not sifting through date stamps on backups through your filer, because it can get pretty big at some points depending on what you're running for a NAS and the speed of writes. Once they've compromised the NAS credentials, we see those things go down pretty hard. When you look at the response, so of course we tie into SIEM and SOAR. We support webhooks, syslogs, APIs, and direct plugins. So Commvault has partnered with most of it. We do a really bad job of marketing this fact, but just about anything out there, we can tie it in. And we can tie it in bidirectionally. In the case of something like a ServiceNow, we can pipe into ServiceNow, and ServiceNow can do self-service activation for your users to pipe in and automate Commvault. If you check out api.commvault.com, you'll see a full list of our APIs. There are several hundred of them. These are items that you can do with us. And there's a drop-down for each one that gives it to you in one of 30 languages, meaning you get to code it whatever language you want. So you can go full-on IAC with this and basically not have to manage anything. When we start looking at storage, how do you make that immutable? If the storage that you're using doesn't have built-in immutability, what about admin access in Commvault? Those kind of things come up pretty frequently. Now, immutable means different things to different people. When we look at appliances, we want to make sure that you can't get to the ILO or iDRAC or SIMC and smoke the RAID set. We want to make sure that multi-factor is turned on across the board so that only admins can get in there. We want to make sure that if you're trying to delete or reduce a retention, you have to call support and have someone else within your org also call support and verify, or our support will reach out to known numbers and known contacts to verify that it's actually something that your business is attempting to do. So we've released two different things. There's a worm lock and a compliance lock. And I'll get into kind of the differences. Compliance lock allows us to prevent an admin from deleting systems that are protected, reducing retentions, basically taking any malicious action through our UI. So if you've got an admin account that gets compromised and you weren't using MFA and you didn't turn on the restricted workflows, compliance lock will prevent tampering with the data, no matter what your rights are within the system. And it will give you a big warning when you turn this on. Like, are you sure you've got your retentions where you want them? Because you're not going to get to touch them until you call us. Wormlock extends the capability down to the storage, and it introduces an API handoff from Commvault to the storage. So I see something in the questions. I see there was a FlashBlade conversation. For example, FlashBlade does object lock or object safe mode. Well, Commvault is ingrained with the FlashBlade API. So if you turn on our worm lock, when they go and curate their object lock, we will seal our DDB at that time in conjunction with the storage. So this is a storage integration. It works in AWS S3. It works with Pure, Vast, Hitachi, many, many others. We've got about 80 arrays integrated with this. If you have our appliance, both of these are enabled by default. The appliance is STIG and immutable. When you turn on Wormlock, it will automatically turn on Compliance Lock. There's no point of one without the other, unless you're just doing Compliance Lock and leaving it up to the back end to take care of worm capability. This is kind of left over from the days when people had, Centeras and archive boxes that already had hardware worm. Now we all tend to do it with software, including the storage vendors. So air gapping. Now this is a pretty interesting concept. Air gap means different things to different people. Commvault has given you the ability within our GUI to create air gaps anywhere that there are two different networks. What I mean is if you've got site A and site B, and you've got storage at site B and you're not doing a layer 2 stretch, well, we can set up an air gap. And this air gap will be handled right through the GUI. You can see there's a two-way, one-way network gateway. We support different topologies. You can introduce hardware if you want. Realize that firewalls are sold based on throughput. So putting a firewall in front of an air gap is okay. After we seed it, and, you're down to a 3%, 5% change rate, we can probably get that through the firewall. In the event of a mass recovery, we would want to relax the firewall so that it's not inspecting all the restore packets and slowing everything down. But you can do this without hardware. And the way we would do this is create up these two networks. So on the left, we've got our production environment. We've got the ComServe, which handles the policies, role-based access control, multi-factor, 4 eyes, all that. You've got, in this case, our appliance, but this could be any hardware platform or stack that you want. This is where we're doing the live scanning. We're doing threat detection. We're doing malicious file detection. We're doing all of the entropy, those kind of things. So we've got a good clean backup there. And now over at this vault, we actually can call it a clean room because the data at production is clean. And we don't replicate, we don't push anything into the clean room. So the clean room is going to do a pull. And you can see it's 443 outbound only. And the production side is inbound only from this IP range. What we do is we actually will request the blocks that are missing, and these deduped and compressed and encrypted, of course. And the way we hash is we'll do our dedupe at different levels. It's tunable. So let's say we're doing 32K dedupe. We're going to save enough of those chunks to create a block of data, or a chunk, as Commvault calls it. For every chunk, which is default 128K, we're going to create a session between prod and DR and send that chunk. That is a TLS secured encrypted tunnel. It is a point-to-point. It goes from one side directly to the other, and it's going to push only the unique data that's missing from the clean room. And then as soon as that chunk travels across the line, the line will be severed. So if you're sending terabytes of data, this is going to stand up and tear down hundreds of sessions. So man in the middle goes completely away. We do have the ability to provide a cloud-based air gap as well, which I'll show you in a second. But once the data's in here, it doesn't just have to sit cold. You can see that we've got a VMware cluster in there, and we're doing some app validation. We have an ability to do what's called Virtualize Me. This is all free in the product. Virtualize Me allows you to set up workflows that basically do a DR runbook in that clean room without affecting production. We'll bring applications up in order, tiered applications included, clustered applications. You know, if it was clustered SQL or Oracle on production, we will turn that. We actually convert it into a virtual machine to run in VMware with the active mounts all in one VM. We'll start the services. We'll start the app tier, the web tier, whatever there is, and we'll ensure that the application is talking. We'll run a virus scan, defender scan, CrowdStrike, whatever you'd like. And we can even leave it up for user validation testing. At that point, we tear it down and send a report to your compliance team. This can be something that you do monthly, weekly, doesn't matter. It can be a subset of your data, it could be all your data. We do encourage folks, if you're preparing for a ransomware attack, to practice the recovery. Just like a DR test, you want to be familiar with this. You want to make sure that everything's working the way you expect. And this will drastically reduce our RTOs. But Commvault goes so far as to automate this whole process for you. So it's really a zero touch. Literally, once this is set up, you'll get a report when it runs, and that's it. If the report looks clean, then you're good to go. Metallic Recovery Reserve. Now, this is a cloud-based air gap. This is hosted in our tenant, so it gets it completely out of your environment. You simply plug in the license key into the CommServe, and the storage becomes available. Now, this is the only storage that we charge you for backend. Normally, we don't charge for the backend. You can make as many copies as you want, but since we're eating the storage costs here, we do charge you for what you use. This is an IL4 Plus GCC high capable product as well. So you can drop into our cloud, and just like the point-to-point, it'll sever those connections when it's done, and we eat the egress. If you do have to come back from this, we will pay those egress fees because it's in our tenant. So that is all rolled in. So if you want something that's basically a turnkey bucket to just dump things into and have it completely offline, there is nothing a hacker could do in your environment to impact what we have in our environment. It is completely isolated. When we get to the recover point, I talked about those predefined recovery plans, process automation, order sequencing, all those kind of things are built in. We also have a ransomware readiness service. Being that we have such a wide customer base in every vertical, and we get a cyber incident pretty much once a day, we do have a team dedicated to helping customers harden their environment ahead of time. Now, when I say that, I want you to understand that that is to harden your environment from a Commvault perspective. We are not a security company. I don't want to give you false hope that if you just, hey, throw Commvault in, you can get rid of all your IDS and other things and you're going to be good. That's not true, and that's misleading. But we are able to participate with any third party that you're involving. And we would encourage, if you're that worried or if you have highly sensitive data in your environment, to engage a company like Redacted. These are ex-NSA hackers that are used to dealing with direct state-level threats that now provide a service to end users, and they'll take it as far as you want. And I mean as far as you want. Somebody steals your IP, they will pursue that IP. They will counter-hack the hacker. That's my plug for them. That's a security company. I don't see any of those in this forum. So we'll keep that delineation. But what Commvault can do is quickly and easily give access to your audit team, your incident response team, and we can participate and take first call if there's an event and help you repave the environment, including Tier 0, Active Directory, your VPCs, your CloudWatch, CloudTrail, all those kind of things. We can get that back up and running and reduce your recovery time very, very drastic. Usually the part that takes a long time is the incident response, figuring out where's ground zero, where's the blast radius, what's infected, what isn't, what needs to be recovered. You know, the encryption events made it kind of easy because anything that got encryption was garbage, and you just throw it out and rewrite it. But nowadays, we're seeing that they're not necessarily encrypting people anymore. They're stealing your data, they're egressing it out, and then holding it hostage. If you don't pay, we're going to put it out on dark web, those kind of things. So that is my tirade. I would certainly encourage you to reach out to us. If you think you know what Commvault can do, I'll bet you don't, and I'll bet a gift card on that. Just reach out to natureboy@commvault.com. That's direct to me, and I'll get you in touch with the right team. We have 10,000 customers and growing in our community. We've got 3,000 attendees every year at Connections and 400 customer requests this year. So realize Gartner, Forrester, everybody's got us at the top, and it's for a reason. You know, a lot of folks call us legacy, but it takes time to build a legacy, and we know what we're doing. So thanks for attending today.
Oh man, you had me laughing at the end. I love the challenges to the audience. That's great, and definitely a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for being here with us today. You've already put the poll up for me. Thank you, Rick. So there's a poll up on the screen for all of you out there, and what we're looking for is what is the additional information you would like to get about the Commvault solution. So obviously there's a lot of great stuff. We're just kind of scratching the surface here. There's so much that we can't cover in these short presentations. So make sure that you're getting the follow-up information that you need. Click on that poll on the screen here. I promise you your future self is going to thank you when you get all of these cool resources delivered right to you. So take a second now and click on that. We are pretty short on time here. We're a little bit over, unfortunately. Before you go, though, I'm going to bend the rules, and I apologize for anyone out there that is on a time frame because I'm going to extend a little bit longer here. I'm just wondering, because I saw a few questions coming in about how Commvault improves RTO. Can you just give us a quick, sort of summary points, what you want us to take away when we're thinking about RTO and Commvault?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I would encourage folks to do is think about what the actual objectives and demands of your business are. We take a consulting approach, so we don't try to position you into one of our products initially. We want to see what are you trying to do, how fast do we need to do it, how much data is there. Then it becomes a math problem, right? We need to move 100, we need to restore 100 petabytes, and this is a real customer. We need to move 100 petabytes. We need it back in 4 days. Well, that's a math problem. We need to understand the bandwidth and those kind of things. So the beauty of being hardware agnostic is that we can take advantage of the fastest products on the market, the fastest network tier, the fastest disk topologies, and get you those objectives. So we don't have to come in knowing that, hey, we got to fit you into our box because that's what's on the truck. We don't have to play like that. We can basically architect to your outcomes directly.
I love that. You're building your own game to play. That's amazing, and thank you so much for that answer. Before you leave us, the first step to getting started, to just remind everybody, because you gave us some great contacts and kind of ways to reach out, what do you recommend, what do you want everyone out there to do as the absolute first jumping point into Commvault?
Yeah, I think for a jumping point into Commvault, do a little research, check out the Commvault YouTube. There's quite a lot on there. We do a lot more than just providing backup security. We do digital transformation. We do asset discovery, classification. It really is a data platform. And I think if you're in the cloud, you're going to find that our methodology up there is very elegant. and very cloudy, so the cloud team doesn't push back. You're not building appliances or emulating appliances in public cloud. It's quite nice. It is auto scale, it's auto discover, it's, tears down at the end of the day, so there's no persistent costs. Pretty advanced stuff. So yeah, take a look at our YouTube page, socialize it with your partners or your VARs. Again, you can always hit me up if you want to know who covers you from an account perspective, and I can get you in touch with them. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, feel free to shoot me an email. I cover the Americas, so I'm happy to talk to anybody, anytime.
I love that. All right. Well, who wouldn't want another awesome conversation with you? Thank you so much for being here with us today, Rick. Really appreciate it.
Again, thanks for having us.
And thanks to everyone out there who asked a question. We are going to make sure that these get to the team. I know we had to cut the last two Q&As a little bit short for timing purposes. So I do want to remind you that all of the questions are going to the Commvault team. So you will get answers back, whether it's on live chat right now in the next minute or two before we close out, or in email. So keep those questions coming in. Also, head on over to the handouts tab before you go. Really, you should be getting the handouts every time. I'm going to keep reminding you of that. The Commvault white paper, zero in on risk reduction with zero loss strategy. So ransomware visibility, protection, and recovery all included in one white paper. It is such a great read. It is the perfect follow-up to everything that we just heard. So make sure that you've got that downloaded before we wrap, and take that with you for some, casual light afternoon reading about ransomware. While you guys are downloading the handouts and clicking on the poll, I'm going to go ahead and give away our last prizes, and I promise you I will summarize the entire list. I know everyone always wants to hear that. So our very last winner, who does need to be here present with us live at the MegaCast, of a $300 Amazon gift card is Kalpesh Makwana of Georgia. Kalpesh Makwana of Georgia, you've won a $300 Amazon gift card. And our last Kindle Scribe going to Tracy Vince of Wisconsin. Tracy Vince of Wisconsin. I saw a big Wisco crew out there today. Love that. You have won a Kindle Scribe. All right, I'm going to read the whole list over for you all. Gift card number 1 going to Justin Chevelli of Indiana, and a Kindle going to Winnie Chu or Q of California. A gift card going to Ryan Gillot of California, and a Scribe going to Cameron Moore of Nebraska. A gift card going to Dennis Thibodeau of Tennessee, and a Scribe going to Thomas Durst of South Carolina. A gift card going to Eric Atkinson of North Carolina, and a Scribe going to Joseph Jules of Massachusetts. And finally, a gift card going to Kalpesh Makwana of Georgia, and a Scribe going to Tracy Vince of Wisconsin. As always, we will be in touch with all of our winners after we wrap, so stay tuned for that, plus that best question card coming at you once we've had a chance to review all of the questions asked. So stay tuned for that. And just a little reminder there that that gets checked out after we wrap. All right. I do also want to remind you all that if you are on the MegaCast today, you're hanging out with us and you're thinking, boy, this is fun, and it is, I promise you, and you want to come present, maybe a summit, maybe an EcoCast, maybe a MegaCast, a webinar, a panelcast, a democast. Boy, do we have a plethora of ways that you can come hang out with myself, Scott, David, Keith, all of our awesome moderators here. So if that's something you're interested in, shoot us a message. connect@actualtechmedia.com. We would love to chat with you. Well, with that, I think I will have to wrap it up. I've been stretching it out as long as I could because I'm enjoying hanging out with you all so very much today. But I think we will have to leave it there. So on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank all of our speakers today from Unitrends, Rubrik, Pure Storage, Cohesity, and Commvault for making this fascinating MegaCast possible. A very special thank you to all of you for attending, for asking some great questions. I saw some really great questions coming in today, even some that were questions on questions on questions all stacked together, which was great. High fives for everybody. And I've just had a great time chatting with you all, sharing some of these resources, talking about as I said at the start here, dressing for the slide, not the ride. We're talking about how we recover, how we get up when we drop our bike, when something happens, when the worst happens. How do we get up quickly? How do we get back on our feet quickly and get back on that bike again? And that really is where the comfort comes from, right? Because if you're putting all your effort and energy into the walls, that's awesome. But part of you is always going to wonder, what is going to happen if somebody gets through? And feeling that security that you're going to be okay if and when something gets through your walls, that's what allows you to sleep well at night. So really, really focusing on that recovery, I think, is key. All right, well, before you take off today, I want to make sure you've all marked your calendars for the EcoCast coming up on Thursday, March 30th. That's tomorrow. Wow, it's the end of March already. And we are going to be talking about improving security and ransomware preparedness in financial services organizations. So if that piques your interest, the financial services organizations kind of applies to you, or you just want to chat a little bit more about improving security and ransomware preparedness, why not? Come hang out with us. We're going to be chatting with Rubrik and ServiceNow, some awesome teams. That's Thursday, March 30th. Tomorrow, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. And I hope that you will come and join us there. And hopefully I'll see you on Thursday. If not, maybe I'll see you on Friday. Maybe I'll see you next week. Whenever it is, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful end to your day. Thanks all.